vote on the main division. But maybe also more of this tomorrow, but what the Act brings now is that even the portfolio committees themselves will have to consider the provincial adjustment budget for their relevant portfolios. Because currently the system as it is, you'll find that the adjustment budget is only considered by the Portfolio Committee of Finance. And then members are taken by surprise, let's say the following financial year, when they find that monies have been shifted from this program to that program within, that is, the portfolios they are responsible for, because they did not consider the adjustment budget, that is, the different portfolio committees. But this Act now is going to sort of make it sort of compulsory that the committees also consider, that is, the adjustment budgets. I think that's that regarding that. And then section 14. This section allows the MEC for Finance and the Provincial Treasury to make technical corrections to a money bill. It stipulates that notwithstanding any provision in this Act, the House or committee may consider an amendment to a money bill proposed by the MEC responsible for finance in order to make technical corrections to the bill. So that is, it may happen that after introducing, that is or tabling, that is the budget, the provincial treasury, that is the team, may identify some technical mistakes in the bill itself. And then the section 14, it allows for them to make such amendments, that is to the budget. And then section 15 of the Act. This section is about the establishment and functioning of the Provincial Legislature Budget Unit. Maybe let me just, the section specifies that the legislature hereby establishes the Provincial Legislature Budget Unit. The main objective of this budget unit is to provide a non-partisan, high quality and independent technical analysis, objective and professional advice to the legislature on matters related to provincial budget and other money bills. The core function of the Provincial Legislative Budget Unit is to support the implementation of this Act by undertaking research and analysis for the Budget Committee referred to, that is in section 4. And it should annually provide reviews and analysis of documentation tabled in the Provincial Legislature by the MEC responsible for finance. It should also monitor and synthesize matters and reports tabled and adopted in the House, most of those reports which have got budgetary implications, with particular emphasis on reports by other committees. And it should also keep abreast of policy debates and developments in key expenditure and revenue areas. And then on slide 49, that is the last bullet, that is the Provincial Legislature Budget Unit must annually receive a budget from the legislature in line with the plans as submitted. And then the Provincial Legislature Budget Unit may undertake research on request by the House, by the other committees or members of the legislature on matters related to the budget and other money bills, subject to capacity then. There must be a cooperative working relationship between the Provincial Legislature Budget Unit and other research structures within the legislature. So that is, there must be a cooperative working relationship. And then the Budget Committee must recommend to the Speaker a person with requisite experience, qualifications, and leadership skills to manage the legislature budget unit. And then the budget unit must recommend suitably qualified persons as employees of the Provincial Legislature Budget Unit. I think these two maybe I need to explain, because now it's the budget unit. It's the budget committee that must recommend suitable qualified employees to the legislature. So this Act, in a way, it makes now the budget committee, it gives it the responsibility of, let's say, sourcing or employing its own support. Yes, that's what it does. The reason being that it's contained in that non-partisan, independent support which should be given. So there should not be any influence from the legislature itself. It should, that is the budget committee, but it will do it through the administration of the legislature. If I may take the members back a bit, though it was not mentioned, it's also that when research was done regarding, that is, the establishment of this budget unit, and also with the national PPO, you find that in some legislatures and also in some countries, the provincial legislature budget unit, it exists as an entity of the legislature, completely independent of the legislature. It exists as an entity of the legislature to assist the budget committee. But during the drafting of this act then, we sort of shied away from having this, that is the provincial legislature budget unit as an entity, but by all means tried to ensure its own independence. But I think maybe later, Dr. Yankis, without putting words into your mouth, because he's currently, that is the director of the PPO, they are living with this, so he may expand and maybe mention some challenges they have, that is regarding this. And then again, that is slide 52 is also just about the provincial legislature budget unit, which states there, that is who must lead the budget unit, and also that in carrying out the duties and functions, the unit may solicit the services of experts and consultants. And also important, that is the slide 53, that is that first bullet. That is the provincial legislature budget unit may obtain information it requires for the performance of its functions from any organ of state or person the provincial legislature budget unit considers appropriate. And then any information which the provincial legislature budget unit requires for the performance of its functions and which is available to an organ of state or any institution that derives any funds from the national revenue funds, a provincial revenue fund or a municipality must, on request, be supplied timeously and free of charge by that organ of state or institution to the provincial legislature budget unit, unless they are prohibited by law from doing so. And then that is, we have got section 16 of the Act. That section 16, it provided that is for the transitional arrangements to enable implementation of the Act. And then that section 16 of the Act stipulates that the secretary to the legislature must second legislature officials to the budget committee for a period of not more than 4 months after its establishment. But well, the honorable members, they have already mentioned that that is about the staffing of the budget committee. And then it says it must provide administrative support to the committee. I think that is about all. Thank you, honorable members. Thank you, honorable chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Doc. I could see that maybe I intimidated you by saying you are dividing the responsibility between you two. But there is one thing that I like about you is the polite delegation of authority to Dr. Yankis. It's a very polite one. I think we need a new term for that type of a delegation. So we'll call it the polite one. Thank you very much. We are not doing too bad with time. We are not doing too bad with time, so we have enough time for interacting with these presentations that we have so far. That is including the opening remarks by the chairperson, because he has touched on certain issues, even the operations of the committee, the staffing of the committee, and other issues, and around the matters of the purpose and objectives themselves. Now there has been the presentation that has been made by Honorable Benjamin on the journey as well of the establishment of the bill, and now the actual act has been outlined, And if then there are, I think we will deal with the issue of comments, questions, and discussions on pertinent issues in relation as to these discussions. We have up to 1 o'clock to deal with that. We have about 17 minutes, but because we started a little bit late, I will ensure that we use the 30 minutes that we were to use for the discussions. Unless the discussions then are shorter than the time, then we'll save time again. So I think what we will do, we will note hands. But the other thing that I want to say as well is that some of the questions and the maybe areas of clarity might border on the presentations that are still to be made by both the PPO and the FFC. So what I think I need to propose is to say, on issues like those, you should be on the alert to pick them up so that when you make your own presentation, you touch on those issues again, because these will overlap and they will sort of, at a particular point, have some areas where they touch each other or border on each other on the levels of both demarcation and operation thereof. So I will now note hands, and now you will lose your names, and you are named numbers now. So keep your number as your second name. I will start with this side. You are number 1, Deputy Chair of Chairs, and then you are number 2, Honorable Pillay. You are number 3, Honorable Kasim. You are number 4. Yes, Honorable Zibule. You are number 4. You are number 5, Honorable Mkhaga. Keep your numbers, I might not keep them well. You are number 6, Honorable Dimaza. Sometimes it's a wise act to lift your hand up even if you are not sure of what you want to ask, because we won't have a second round. It's only this round so that we manage time. So in that order, number 1 should be brief and sort of prompt in your question so that we will quickly capture it, and then we don't spend time on the questions, but rather on the responses. Thank you very much. And number 1.
Thank you, Honorable Program Director. Greetings to you, to the COC, the Chief Whip, Deputy Chief Whip, all chairpersons of the committees, our whips and the members, as well as our technocrats. Honorable Chair, mine is in relation with Section 4. Now that the status of the chairpersons of the legislature portfolio committees who are not members of the budget committee that may participate in the budget committee with no voting status. My question, Chair, is regarding the members of the portfolio committees that may be invited to attend the budget committee meetings when issues relating to their clusters are being considered. I just want to know what will be their status. Thanks, Chair.
Number 2. Number 2.
Chair, it is not working, but I will speak. Thank you very much for the presentation. My first question is that, the presentation is talking about the application is the oversight perspective. I understand when you say that it is up to the oversight perspective. But let us say that if it was not like that, what changes it would have been done? Then we would understand better that we limit within the oversight perspective how it will work. Because from one to the other one, when it transgress, especially in terms of money, it is important we did know from a practical example we can understand. The second one is that there are currently only two provincial legislatures are done this thing, and which is said in the presentation. But if you look at the the Gauteng and here, there are stark differences in the way it implements. So I just want to check, let's say other 7 of the provinces where this is not there. How this is going to, for example, the ultimate objective is probably to look at the spending as well as how we control the revenue generation. At the moment, if these are not there, how are we managing this thing? So that we understand that once the committee comes into play, how does it help? This bill was introduced year 2020. There were no chance for maybe to interact. So questions may be very preliminary. But because we are asking this to get a clarity. Again, we are introducing this particular bill to move away from certain things of the National Money Bill Act. But it is the National Money Bill Act is also talking about a budget unit. So how do we actually, so there is no real difference while we are appointing a budget unit, which is fine, because the last part Dr. Mehrdasa was mentioning about it, he was talking about there will be secondment and all that. Remember, if this particular unit is to be there, it needs high capacity people, high skilled people and all that. But which was already there, then how does it differ from the National Money Bill Act, which actually has something? Because if you look at the other province, it is completely putting it in a very different way. Lastly, on the tax, this particular money bill is coming into play. How does it change? For example, we can make recommendations. The recommendations will go to the House resolutions. Then it goes to the MEC. But nowhere it is saying that if it is not, the finance MEC is not taking care of this thing, what will be the step? Because the purpose is to change this money spending or the tax or what, but that particular part is silent, it is meaningfully silent. Whether this is not acting, that amendment, what can the House do? What can the legislature do? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Number 3. Okazazi utrine. It's Honorable Kasim. You are number 4, that is what I know. He's number 3. Take number 3, Honorable Kasim. Honorable Panga, I'm about to reallocate you another seat because you are disturbing the old man there. He's never involved in speaking whilst other people are speaking. It's because he's next to you. I know that one. And he has been indicating to me that it's you. Yeah. Did I say old? I meant young. Sorry. Over to you, Honorable Kasim.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Doc, for the presentation. I think it makes it quite clear. Just a couple of questions. Motions. Members introduce motions into the legislature, either with or without notice, which are debated. That also has budgetary implications if those motions are to be implemented by the executive or different departments. How would that feed into the process? I know that there is a mention somewhere here about any other matters of the, within the rules of the legislature, but should there not be some specific process on how motions that are adopted by this House are then budgeted for, and then it's checked that that is included in the budgets of the relevant departments that have to implement the substance of those motions. The second one is the budget unit is available to conduct research on behalf of members and et cetera, but it's limited to its capacity. And I think therein lies the devil, because if the budget unit is not properly capacitated, a member might have, for example, and I'm going to go back because as members we represent constituencies, and if I want to introduce a motion that is relevant to one of my constituents or communities in my constituency, I would, for example, require the budget unit to do the costing so that before we come to debate in the House, we have that information available. Is there, any part of the legislation that prescribes, the minimum capacity required in order for the budget unit to meet its mandate in this respect? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Number 4.
Thanks, Chair. My first question, I think, was covered because I had a question on composition of the budget committee. But if you look on slide 11, that has been covered. But my other question that I had was is on slide 8, where it says the last line there that says amendment proposed by the MEC. I wanted to check whether is that the MEC of Finance or any MEC of any departments that it refers to that the amendments should be proposed by. But also, just to check, is that not limiting if we're saying only the MEC would be allowed to forward the amendment on the money bill, or is it not, should not be maybe an executive? And then also, what is the role of the portfolio committee in that? Because I understand that sometimes that when the portfolio committee deals with the budget, there are some recommendations that they would want to be featured on the budget. Would that not be limiting if we're saying the amendments would be proposed by the MEC only? Or should we not stretch it to say the executive, or also to speak of the committee at large of the legislature in terms of the amendments of the proposed budget? The other question that I had was the appointment of it's on slide 11. The part that says the budget consists of the budget committee, the second bullet, the budget committee consists of members appointed by the rules committee proportional to their representation. I think it's the one that speaks of the chairperson. Sorry, it's like 12. Sorry, it's to say it's 11. Chairperson of the legislative portfolio committees who are not members of the budget committee may not participate in the budget committee but have no voting rights. Is that not limiting the role of the committees to say chairpersons could be part of the budget committee but they don't have the voting rights? Because most activities happen in the committees, and some of the actual evaluation and the contribution by the portfolio committees could be felt through the chairpersons of the committees. Therefore, should we not say the chairperson of the portfolio committee should be part of the budget committee and also automatically like the committee of chairpersons, so that their contribution should be felt and directly being impacted by the committees that they sit on? Because is that not limiting the effectiveness of the portfolio committees to say their chairpersons will only be part of the budget committee but won't have the voting rights? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Number 5?
Yeah. We're taking back what belongs to us now. Thanks, Honorable Chair. I could say that really we're taking back what belongs to us now. Because we're used to deal with appropriation bill and adjustment, which mainly was done through Treasury. And I take it that some of our responsibilities were hidden in that discussion, in the absence of all of us. And I could see here that we're beginning to venture into that space. Chair, mine is around the question of staffing. I welcome the recommendation that says the committee, part of it is having a right to recommend the appointment or employment of staff members. I take it that there are measures that will be controlling that particular process so that it does not become purely a political process, but the balance becomes important as far as that is concerned. Because here, it's clear out of listening to a presentation that we would need specialists, not in Yamazan. Not in Yamazan. We would need specialists, really, who are conscious of our responsibility, but also understand the strategic direction of the overall government. It's not just pure academics, but people who understand that we represent people here, and therefore we're talking people's budget. That must meet the basic needs of our people. And I'm welcoming that space in that context. Maybe it's a matter of reportwa purely provincial legislature processes. Space in the second one, Chair, is in relation to Section 10, Bullet 2. The very last bullet, Section 10, ordering a rejection within 4 months. Would legislature must pass with or without amendments or reject the provincial appropriation bill within 4 months after the start of the financial year. I would need more elaboration in Sitele too. I would need more elaboration as far as that is concerned. Yeah, in the language here. Linked to that is the right of the MEC and Treasurer to make some technical correction on the money bill. To make some technical correction on the money bill. I take it that once a committee, budget committee, we take our own decision, follow all processes. Beyond that space, I wouldn't understand as to what changes could an MEC effect on what we have concluded as a budget committee. Can I be explained here? Because I take it that Treasury, after we've followed all other processes as a budget committee, we're done with our process. What we're expecting is that the Treasury must comply in whatever way that is the outcome of a democratic process. Now, when we're talking of these technical changes, technical could be a huge concept, and not temporary with the whole matter that we have debated as a budget committee. Can I be comforted as far as that area is concerned? The last one, Chair, is in relation to this question of a legislature, not an anti-budget committee, not an entity of the legislature, but also be ensured of independence. I was a question one time. Sayeka abantu abantu national assembly bakhumsha kakhulu. Qoba siyeke andiyayibuza nangoku. Doctor is making a reference to other countries. That other countries, the budget committee becomes an entity. An entity it want to guarantee its own independence. But here, it's an entity built in within the legislature. But also, guaranteed of its own independence. Can you elaborate more on the balance? Because I'm failing to strike a balance between the two. I'm failing to strike a balance between the two so that we get a clarity, because I think it's very critical for defining the future of this community. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Number 6. Honorable Demaza.
No, Chair, thank you very much. Good afternoon. I think I've got just some few questions, but one of maybe to what you Honorable Delay. I think on slide 33, Chair, slide 33. My argument or what I'll be proposing is based on slide 33, maybe even on other slides. I think, Chair, there is this question that we are saying there are only 2 provinces that do have this committee, that is the Eastern Cape and Gauteng, though Eastern Cape is at an advanced stage as compared to the other, to Gauteng. Now, what is happening with other 7 provinces? Now, then my proposal, Chair, will be, what we need to do, we need, because we have got researchers, we have got everything as a province, to check, to have a clear document as to why, for instance, other provinces don't have this committee. That's what is critical. Why? But maybe one will say, when you look into the slide that I've quoted, slide 34, no? We're going at 33. But that slide 33, we'll talk about the appropriation, talks about the appropriation bill, what have you. You'll understand that whenever there is a provincial appropriation, the Speaker will say this stands referred to the Portfolio Committee on Finance, right? That's what you'll get. This stands referred to the Portfolio of Finance. The same with other, you can look into some of the other roles here. There are committees that have been dealing with some of the things. So it needs then to say, it's either other provinces saw some kind of clashes between these and then now they're delaying deliberately, or I don't know. But we need, as a province, to find out what happened with those particular provinces. Secondly, we need, as a province, with the team of legal people that we have, as a province, to start to isolate, to be clear as to say, this was done by this committee, now this is what is going to happen, or if this committee is still going to do this, and then how does this get into this particular committee? Because you'll find out that the portfolio committees will also get to the budget, but you'll find out now it is said those particular portfolio committees will start to refer other things to this particular committee, you see? So that is something that we need to look into carefully, and we need to look into that and have a clear understanding of what is happening. Secondly, Chair, there is on slide 34, yes, on slide 34, around the question of the budget committee must give the MEC responsible. Now, I'm just referring to that because it's referring to the MEC, but there are other things of other MECs. I think, Chair, it becomes very, very important. I want to emphasize, very, very important, that MECs, HODs, and CFOs of the different departments, they have to be workshopped. MECs have to be workshopped as far as this is concerned. The reason why, Chair, I'm raising this, those who were here, very sorry to go back a little bit to have a history, and those who have been here, they understand when SOM, sector oversight model, was workshopped or was introduced at ICC, everybody was called. And Presently, you'll find out when you get into committees, you sit into committees, and you start to see people who don't understand when members of the House are starting to be robust, implementing what is contained in the song. And then that is where you'll find out we clash sometimes even with the HODs, and we clash with the executive, because sometimes people don't understand. They fail to understand that now you are basing this on the South Sector Oversight Model. It demands of you to do A, B, C, D as a person who's doing oversight. The same thing with this particular committee that we have. Now, we need MECs and the HODs of the different departments to be workshopped. We need not only to start to workshop on the Treasury, for Treasury to come and listen. And we know those of us who sit in finance will understand sometimes the challenges that Treasury experience as far as the departments are concerned. So I'm saying, Chair, there needs to be a workshop to be extended to include all departments. If it is a way of forcing them to attend to that particular workshop, I think it will be good, because at the end of the day, quite a lot of roles, the roles of this particular committee, honestly speaking, they won't be in a position to implement them as a committee. Otherwise, if we don't workshop, so that people start to understand that this committee is doing what it is supposed to do. And if then that's why I said, Chair, we have noko ibe khona ibumbijanyana be workshop that has to be done around those. And overlapping, I've handled overlapping. No, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Sokgqibela, Esther. That was my last hand in relation to the hands that were lifted. That was the last hand. That one. That was the last hand. Yeah. What I'm going to say around, because remember we're trying to manage time. What I'm going to say is that when the presentations by the FFC and the PBO are made, we will still have a little bit of a leeway to the two members that wanted to ask questions. So I am noting you for that presentation. That is those presentations that are still to come. That is Honorable Ndabeni and Honorable Banga. You will be given an opportunity to ask even on this one there, because we have to just manage time. We will now hand over to the responders in relation as to the questions. Some were comments, but also the comments that might need even the chair of the committee, Honorable Duba, on some issues, the staffing and other things, that you make some reflections on them. I think our team is going to help you, because I could see that you were not here when those indications were made. The chief whip has just indicated that he has gone to take care of something. So I don't want people to be loose and say that the chief whip was here, so he's not here, so I can't be here as well. So he indicated to me where he is. Over to you, Tim.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the honourable members.
So sorry for stepping you. I just wanted to say, Dr. Yanchis and Dr. Jonas, that if there are issues, even though they respond to them, that you feel that you want to elaborate further, please do that in your presentation, during your presentation. Thank you. Over to you. Sorry for that.
No problem, Chair. Thank you, Chair, and to the honourable members for the questions. Chair, starting with the one from Honourable Maqubela, I think it's the same question as was asked by Honourable Zibula on the issue of the chairpersons who will participate but may not vote. It's a similar process that is currently followed in terms of the standing rules of the legislature, specifically rules 65 and 10 of the standing rules. where if there is a matter before a committee that needs the participation of other members who are not part of that committee, may then participate, but without necessarily having voting rights. The same rule is applicable as far as the Standing Committee on Triple P and E, Rule 62, Sub-Rule 4, when a matter that involves a chairperson of a particular committee appears before the Standing Committee on Triple P and E. That committee, in terms of the standing rules, is legally empowered to invite that chairperson to attend a meeting of the Standing Committee on Triple P and E, because there is a matter that affects the chairperson of that committee. So it is the same process that will be followed if that particular chairperson is not a member of the Standing Committee on Budget and Money Bills, but if there is a matter that is of interest for that chairperson of that committee. We have drawn inspiration from the two rules, Rule 65, as well as Rule 62, Sub-Rule 4. Then in relation to what happens when an MEC does not implement a recommendation, what can the House do? I think these are the issues that Dr. Miateze, this is the issue that Dr. Miateze sought to explain in his presentation, that, and even in the presentation by the chairperson of the committee, that it is a generally accepted practice internationally that the preparation of the budget is done by the executive. Even Section 119 of the Constitution says that who may introduce legislation in the legislature, but is specific to say that only the MEC responsible for financial matters in the province may introduce money bills. But now here is where the trick is. Section 123 of the Constitution, 120 subsection 3 of the Constitution says that yes, the MEC introduces money bills. He's the only one who does that. But the legislature must have an act that details a process by which those money bills can be amended by the legislature. A process, because we did not have this act as the Constitution requires. So what the process that is outlined in our standing rules, which Dr. Miateze touched on, to say that our standing rules would have to be amended. Because remember, for each and every piece of legislation that is introduced in the legislature, the minute it is formally introduced in the legislature, it becomes a legislature bill. It becomes a legislature bill, irrespective of who introduced it. But what our standing rules envisage, because we didn't have the legislation that is envisaged by Section 120, subsection 3, was that after the Committee of the Whole House process, when we consider money bills, the chairperson of committees presides over the Committee of the Whole House stage. He then summons the Speaker to come inside the chamber to report on the process that the members followed. And what then the presiding officer, the Speaker, does is to ask the MEC responsible for finance to move for the adoption or the rejection of the bill. That is not what is supposed to happen. So a review of the standing rules is necessary because it's a legislature bill. The minute that it is introduced, the legislature takes over. So if after all the toing and froing that Dr. Miateze spoke of, there are timelines that must be adhered to. I think it's Section 13.7 in the Act. It says that after the MEC has responded, the toing and froing has done, the committee is legally required in terms of Section 13, subsection 7 of the Money Bills Act to come back and report in the House within a certain period, within a certain number of days. It may happen that there have been no consensus or meeting of minds between the committee and the MEC responsible for financial matters in the province, but the committee must bring a report to the House. And as the committee brings a report to the House, the committee, the Speaker, puts the bill, with or without amendments, to the House. The Speaker is not supposed to be asking the MEC responsible for financial matters to move for the adoption or the rejection of the bill. So that is a process that it's the last step. There will be toing and froing to try and get to a common ground. And taking into account all the negotiations that would have happened. But remember, the executive also has a further, I would say, a safeguard, because the act is assented to by the Premier. So once the House has passed that act, heaven forbid the MEC is not happy, the legislature has passed the act, we then send it in terms of the Constitution to the Premier for assent. The MEC and the Premier are part of the Executive Council. So maybe the MEC would bring to the attention of the Honorable Premier his or her reservations. But the Premier, in terms of the Constitution, is allowed to refer back the bill to the legislature. But what the Constitution says, he or she can only refer it back on account of constitutional reservations, not because he or she is unhappy. It must also be, it must be because there are constitutional reservations on either the process that was followed, that maybe there was no sufficient public participation, but it cannot simply be because they were unhappy. The bill would then be referred to the relevant committee, and that relevant committee would come back to the House to report. If again there's disagreement, the Constitutional Court in terms of the Constitution would then adjudicate on the matter. And of course, it must still be based on constitutional reservations, not on reservations that I'm not happy with the amendment that was done or effected by the provincial legislature. It is a situation that I think that's the long and short of the process that would be followed in cases where there are disagreements. Then on the issue of the motions from Honorable Kassam, Dr. Miataza will take that. But in as far as substantive motions are concerned, remember on substantive motions, we need a notice of motion before they are scheduled for debate. And there are safeguards because some of these motions, if not most of them, would inadvertently have financial implications or budgetary implications. But they are built-in safeguards in the sense that, remember when we debate, when honorable members rather debate a notice of motion, the MEC responsible or the MEC affected or the department affected is given an opportunity to respond to the notice of motion. And the motion is then based on whether the House passes it or not and becomes a resolution of the House. It then becomes, if it is passed, it becomes a House resolution, a resolution of the House. And then it is referred to the relevant department in terms of Rule 202 and 203 for the affected member of the Executive Council to respond to it. It is at that stage that the affected member of the Executive Council in terms of Rule 202 and 203 would then say, I need more time because this has budgetary implications. We won't be able to implement this in this financial year. But my colleague can also come in on that. As far as the issue of the budget unit being the capacitation and the minimum capacity required, honorable members, through you, Chair, there is minimum capacity required for the legislature budget unit. In the schedule to the bill, which was costed before the public participation processes, the schedule does, to the bill, does state what is the minimum capacity required for the legislature budget unit. That budget unit is supposed to have economists. It is supposed to have budget assessors. It is supposed to have policy analysts. It is also supposed to have legal advisors. So there are minimum technical requirements that the legislature budget unit must have. And it is by no it is not even close to, it's minimum, Honorable Cousin, through you, Chair. It is minimum in the sense of minimum, the true sense of the word minimum, because it is by no means close to what my colleagues from Provincial Treasury would have as far as the technical capacity is concerned. But it is taking into consideration of the budget that the legislature has. What would the legislature afford? Remember, the Provincial Treasury and National Treasury have a whole team of technical, the doc is whispering and saying that they have in excess of 300 at National Treasury. So it's the bare minimum that the legislature budget unit will have. But at the very least, we had said that we need a team of economists, we need a team of policy analysts, we need a team of budget assessors, we need a team of researchers, and we need a team of legal advisors. But as I'm saying, it is nowhere near a match to what the preparers of the budget have. The issue on the amendments proposed by the MECs, I'll link the two questions from Honorable Zibile as well as Honorable Mkhacha. It is technical amendments in the true sense of the word technical. Errors in the bill, mistakes, honest mistakes. Nothing else. That's what Section 14 deals with. The MEC would be given an opportunity if there was a typo in the figures, just honest mistakes, nothing beyond that. The rejection in 4 months. I think the question on the independence of the budget unit, Chair, we would like our colleague, Dr. Jantjies, to just give a scenario of the importance of having the budget unit being independent and how their PBO was initially structured and the challenges that they encountered in the manner in which it was initially structured and how it is structured now to try and deal with those challenges that they had encountered as far as their independence as well as their reporting lines. We settled for a hybrid approach because of the size of the legislature and the finances of the legislature and the kind of the money bills that the legislature would be dealing with. But if Chairperson, you will allow Dr. Jantjies to just give a scenario and a bit of a background as to the importance of having the budget units or the parliamentary budget offices being completely independent. We had to settle for a hybrid, semi-independent budget unit. But an ideal situation is that it must be completely independent. Theirs even has a board of directors that it reports to, just to retain that element of independence of the budget office. Why do other provinces don't have this committee? We did a benchmarking with our colleagues, and I agree entirely, Chair, through you with Honorable Dimaza, that a further benchmarking needs to be done. But what we had picked up when we did the benchmarking with our colleagues at the time when we were drafting the bill was that in some of the provinces, the main reason was a lack of political will to have this in place. There was no appetite from the executive for this kind of committee. We have recently been engaged by our colleagues from KZN, who had initially said that there was no political will to have this office. The executive was vehemently opposed to having this piece of legislation. But they have recently reached out to us. They are yet to write to our chairperson of the committee to say that they want our assistance as the legislature because they are just about to draft their own money bills amendment procedure and related matters bill. But at a colleague level, our colleagues reached out to us to say that they are just about now the legislature has seen the importance because of these issues that have to do with the budgets that are being allocated to legislatures and emanating from discussions of the Speakers Forum, KZN, as well as Northwest, are just about on the process to start the drafting process of their money bills amendment procedure. The implications for other committees, the Act Chair, through you, Honorable Dimaza, still envisages the same process that the standing rules outline in terms of Section 9, subsection 3. The appropriation bill will be introduced, and the APPs and the different votes would still be referred to the various committees. The only difference is the referral now of the actual bill. Instead of referring it to the PC on finance, you refer it to the Standing Committee on Budget and Money Bill, because that is now the committee that would then be responsible in terms of the act to do the exercise as far as the bill is concerned that was currently done by the PC on finance. PC on finance would then be seized with the process of exercising oversight over, is it vote 12? Over vote 12. But the bill itself would then go to the Standing Committee on Budget and Money Bills. Thank you, Chair. I don't know if I may have missed out anything. My colleague will then come in.
Quickly, Doc, if there are issues that you would like
No,
to...
I think she has responded to all of them, except that one that is about the 4 months. I think that 4 months that is stipulated there is just trying to be in line with the PFMA, which allows that is expenditure up to 45% of the previous year's budget before any has been spent. It allows for 45%. And also after that, if the budget is not passed, it allows only for 10% to be spent. Now that is for service delivery purposes. That will sort of hinder that is implementation that is of the budget that is out there. So that is now, it tries to be in line and also restrict to facilitate that is a faster passing of the budget to enable, that is the departments to spend. And then the other one, I think Advocate Belcher has covered it regarding that is the motions, where she said that is, if maybe the MEC on that motion requests for more time, or maybe that is the budget for the following year, if that is not done, then eventually it will filter into the BRRRs again, where now there will be pointers that is amend this on that as a result of that motion. Okay, thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you so much. I think Dr. Yankees on the issue of the independence. I think we were gonna sort of tweak that into his presentation and response. I don't know, Chair, from your side, whether there are issues that you wanted to mfakla on them. And then immediately after the Chair, we will then go for lunch in the dining hall. And then I will work on the logistics around that in relation as to time, so that we make up for the 20 minutes that we have lost now. Thank you.
No, thanks, Chair. On the standing and function of this committee might be seen as optical illusion, due to the issue of staffing and the fact that we're in the last year of our term. But I can assure you, honorable members, that in the next EXCO, in the rules meeting, the issue of staffing will be resolved. At least I did get the report and the comfort that we're dealing with that matter. When we leave office in next year, this committee will be up and running full swing. At least I do have the comfort. I just wanted to respond on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. We will break for lunch, honorable members and colleagues. We'll break for lunch. The time now is 13:32. Let us come back exactly at 13:55. That is 5 to 2. Let us come back at 13:55. We're trying to make up for the lost time. At least Noganumiwa. Let us quickly go down there. The food is ready, and then come back. Thank you very much.
important, meeting. So thank you so much. And I think this is really in line with what we have committed before, that we will support the legislature in this process as far as we are able to. I think it has been a long journey, definitely, and I think the Eastern Cape legislature has done quite a lot of work compared to other legislatures. And also, I think the colleagues, Dr. Miataza, Advocate Beja, are correct that this is in compliance with the Constitution. Constitution requires Parliament and legislatures to have the act that guides the legislature on processing of the money bills or budgets. And other provinces not having it actually makes them non-compliant to the Constitution. So it is an important determination. And I agree, other provinces have been working, KZN has also called us to support them, but also other provinces as well. I know they've been doing a lot of work. So you are ahead of the curve, and I think it's a very important determination that you do it in a way that they can also learn from you. The other points, I want to touch them quickly here. I'll touch them in any case, because now. So the presentation, I have a couple of them, but I will try to summarize them as much as possible. But I had to, chairperson and the chairperson today, try to update that and there, remembering that it will be a wider members of the legislature to try and also take everybody on board. So I made some updates on the presentation that you have. So please bear with me, just to clarify it, just to make sure that we can all be on board. This is an outline, looks long, but the presentation won't be that long. It will be just to cut it quite to the point. But I think what's important for me is to make sure that at least I leave here having added value to this process. So, even if I rush, I'll just make sure that I work towards ensuring that members of this important house, have gained value in me being here. After all, you spend money to get me here, Dr. Miataza, so you want to earn your money. The presentation really focuses largely on the fiscal framework, that's what I'm saying. The presentation really focuses a lot on the national perspective of the Money Bills Act as a way to allow the provincial legislature to also learn from that. But also there are some similarities which I would share experiences and challenges, but more importantly, how members can go around some of these processes that or legislative process. I think what I said to Honorable Pillay earlier during lunch is that my biggest concern, my biggest challenge and my views that give me sleepless night is really how the legislatures go around, recognizing the budget or use the budget as a way of impacting our society, impacting our economy, but also moving us to the next level of society. And I think, I feel that, this process enables the legislature itself to really elevate its approach in a way that we focus a lot on the impact of society, because remember, legislatures work with the constituencies. We are able to understand some of the challenges, and when you give inputs to the budget process, it's really about how you transform the society and economy. And that's really, how I told myself in this role that I'm privileged to have been given by Houses of Parliament. It's a very difficult process to come through, to really, how do I play a role supporting the legislatures in deriving or using the budget as a tool to transform our economy and society by giving that important insight in that regard. So that's really how I see this process. And I think looking at our society, economy, I think there are a lot that is required from the legislatures to see how we can transform the society, given our budget process dynamics in this regard. And I think this piece of legislation will be very, very critical. Additionally, they had it for a long time as well, and it's been a learning curve over there. Every year it's been changes and so on, and I think provincial legislature can learn from there how to improve or leapfrog towards being more effective than what has been the case of the national. There has been much amendments of the budget at the national perspective, yet, but there has been shift in mindsets.
In my view, the way the executive engages with the national legislature now is far different than it was before the Money Bills Act was in place, in my view. And I mean, I started this role in 2014, and I've seen that transformation changes as well. So it could also be a mind shift kind of thing to say, we need more as a legislature from you. So I think that can be a lesson that also to come in. So as I said, I'm here to share our experiences and add value into this process. I think the issue is that, my presentation really shared the experience of the national perspective, but I think the message that I want us to take is really anchored around the role of understanding the role of the budget at the legislature level as a tool that we use to transform society, and how as a legislature use these processes to get us to where we want to be, and how we can have balance and checks to ensure that we can have a clear trends that shows things are improving, because at this stage things have been worsening. I must emphasize. You'll see later on there's a section on development indicators. Things have been worsening over time, yet the money has been spent in this regard. And I think this act will empower the legislature to try and change things through. And I think I'm quite happy it's all members, because the budget process interlinks with all functions of government. It's not only a budget committee, but it's all sectors, because government budget, it can't be seen in isolation of what it's supposed to do. So I think it was very important and visionary to bring all the members of the legislature, to bring them together in understanding this process and see how they fit into the whole process. Budget has various instruments, fiscal framework, tax and revenue. There's so many other instruments that's placed in. And also, it's always good to understand how this builds up together into the wider budget as a whole. And I will just talk to only two, the fiscal framework related to the revenue and the division of revenue. The appropriations bill here is more at the national level, but it's similar to what we have in the province. Also recognizing that the budget cycle in the national perspective has three phases. You want the budget in February. There's also the review process where you look at what has happened and whether you've achieved what's supposed to be achieved. And then the third leg is to adjust, and also the midterm part of it. So it's always important to know where are you in the process. And I'm happy that this legislation tried to deal with that as well, clarify responsibilities within those three phases. The fiscal framework is a very important element of it, because in a way, it brings the whole budget together to say, it's largely to say the expression of government on fiscal policy, say, in the next 3 years, we want to focus on these key priority areas as a government to ensure that we deliver on these outcomes. And the fiscal framework at a high level allows government to actually express its fiscal policy. Hence, it's very important, a very contested space, in my view, in terms of what fiscal policy stance you take, and it's very important to understand it. So that's because after fiscal framework is approved, and only then division of revenue is actually approved, and other bills can be approved. So we need to understand, in my view, how the rules are laid around the fiscal framework and how it can be used as an oversight tool, and to ensure that what has been expressed has indeed been realized over time. For example, you set level of expenditure, which expenditure about policy, priorities. If you say there's a level of expenditure to target as a government over the next year, you are expressing your policy, say this one you want to achieve over time as outcomes, and for you to achieve those, you need a level of revenue and level of debts that will enable you to achieve that. And such expression is much projected within the fiscal framework as a broadly speaking. And that also impacts quite well within the provinces and other sectors. So when you come to division of revenue, already everything has been done, or you often say, you've already locked your hands behind with the fiscal framework. So that's a very important space to always recognize. It refers to a broad budget aggregate of, as I mentioned, the level of policy that you want to have, expenditure, and what you're going to use to achieve those. So really it's an expression of how those main variables or main policy objectives you set out to ensure that this is how you're going to transform the society, this is how you're going to transform your economy, and this is how you're going to show your fiscal space remains sustainable over time as well. Because fiscal policy, it's within that framework that, as I said earlier, fiscal policy is a broad expression in terms of allowing people or the service users, government service users, to understand how government got into a fiscal framework or to a level of aggregates, a level of aspirations that they have set out in the fiscal framework, and the fiscal policy objectives are set out to allow us to understand how government's plans of transforming the society and economy has been determined. All allocations at the national level, made from the expenditure envelopes within the budget framework, including the conditional and unconditional allocations. So that expression of, broadly, government aspirations, it all's built into all the money to be used by governments from all spheres of government, including the conditional grants and conditional grants, are locked into that broadly perspective. So it's very important to understand how this whole linked up, even if at the provincial level, how you can play around influencing that space, because once the space of fiscal framework is moved, it's very difficult to, you end up having such constricted space. My view, my understanding, my perspective is that it's always important to take the budget out of the being a number exercise process. And I think the legislature is a very important space, in my view, to do that, to remove it away from it being just a number exercise. And our argument has always been that, our debate has always been that government can and uses the budget to influence society, to influence the economy, and influence how things takes place. And when you start seeing the budget in that way, it really, in my view, make us think differently from the perspective of the budget. Hence, I'm saying we see it as a tool that's used by government or by society, by legislature to influence the society. Various tools also which are part of government budget process include your monetary tools, and those performance or those economic performance influenced by budget does in turn comes back to support the budget at a later stage. For example, when you spend money on service delivery, you need to understand that it encourages economic activities within the economy from society, which later on translate into more revenue generated by government within that space. So that's how we often discuss or argue our debate around understanding the role of budget in the society or in the economy in particular. We've seen in the current year that government has expressed itself for the year, what level of expected growth is expected over the year. And our concern has always been that, I looked at the MEC's of Finance speech as well earlier on, that according to government, a more rapid implementation of economic reforms, complemented by fiscal consolidation, and so many other things are important in determining budget framework over the long term. But I think our argument, or our point has always been over time about the approach that probably you need more than that, because when you see the time when we had the economy growing, we see the time where there were better service delivery, job creations, there's time when you see a lot of government playing space, using budget to play more role within the government. And I think our argument has always been that, to say, in the current state that we're in, to kickstart our economic growth in the face of the high cost of living, to build household resilience by really more service delivered in the houses, have more grants, but also social grants and other forms of grants, and also having more social and infrastructure expansion expanded, which in a way, it translates, again, to the point I argued earlier on, that it's a way that government will use to influence or to transform the economy from where it wants it to be. We know we have a national development plan which set out ourselves where we want to be, and the importance of budget in this regard, it cannot be emphasized much. And increased social support infrastructure should both aggregate demand, because at the same time, when you spend on households, when you spend on social grants, you are sure that that money will be recycled back to the economy. And in a way, you increase your economic activities, which lead to more of an enhancement of economic development or growth in that regard. Also the issue of the
looking at a budget and bringing all the system in as a whole, where you have important roles to understanding how different players within the budget framework, including state-owned corporations, play in as part of the whole system of government, ensuring that there's a proper economic development in the economy. There is obviously the need to understand some of the risks that comes with, and I think we've seen over time that when you think about the budget itself, budget process itself, there's always going to be some of the risks that we consider. And when the fiscal framework is laid out, we have some risks that we often have to regularly review, and our risks, which somehow do diverge some of the risks raised by government, include the fiscal constituency stance itself. We see it as a risk to economic growth over time, and we've seen examples over time where we've seen a lot of lack of investment by government leading to more loss of jobs and less of contraction in our economy. We've seen some of these bottlenecks in the Transnet, and many of these, I couldn't put specifically related to the province, but you see some of those high cost of interest rates, and some of those really impact directly. Load shedding is a big one. How do we use money bills as the legislature to impact the energy security within the regionalized, within the provinces in particular? Because it's one of the risks that you see over time. The debate around fiscal framework often end up letting us to say what kind of budget balances government wants to have. And there's often debates around whether should government run a deficit or should government spend, like people normally say, spend money that they don't have, and so on and so forth. And that's a very good debate because in many instances government does spend money that it doesn't have. But that has to be accounted for, particularly around how is that used within the economy? And is economy or is fiscal framework recognizing it and bringing it back into the system itself? And to say there are economic reasons where government may deliberately spend money that they don't have or borrow more money to effect certain policy provisions. And I think there has to be clear delineation of what will this money be used for, particularly when you give example there. When it's this spend more money on infrastructure, you are more likely to have more benefit over time into the economy and society, but also you're able to reap revenues over time. But also one of the issues that has come quite under attack a lot, it's the use of budget in supporting household, particularly the low-income household, or more social grants and so on. That has come under attack a lot as a way. So people say, no, you shouldn't spend more money within this space. But that, in my view, misses the point that actually spending more money in supporting low-income households shows that, firstly, government cares, but also it avoids other long-term budget constraints of healthcare challenges. But also, it's very important to build such a resilience in the society. And in a way, it becomes more part of the economic policies as well to spend money on social grants. Should always be seen as an economic policy, but not as a social welfare. I know there's a lot of contested debate around that. The other, when you're thinking about fiscal framework, you're thinking about the budget as a whole, always think about where will government get revenue from. There's always a debate to say what comes first. Is the revenue first or is expenditure first? And when you are a budget analyst, government budget analyst, you'll know that it's expenditure first. I know it's very contested. I'm very deliberate said it's expenditure first because that's where you determine your priorities or policy priorities. Because when you go to vote, ask for society to vote for you, you're saying to them you're going to deliver this kind of well-being society and so many other things. And I think that understanding is more importantly, I mean, the debate that we've been debating a lot lately is to say we need to move away the thinking of the budget from different perspectives. Government budget cannot be seen the same way as you see a business or household budget. And you start thinking about that, you realize, because more of the time, and we've also seen in Parliament as well, debate that members will say, or colleagues will say, you don't have money, why are you going to get money to do that kind of expenditure? But we understand that if governments spend money on infrastructure, whether you have it or not, it will have a ripple effects back to the fiscus. You start thinking differently from the, I think I'm actually very, very slow. Chairperson, how am I doing with time? Because my time seems like I'm quite slow.
No, you are still doing fine.
I'm trying to pick up the pace. So the points, what I'm trying to say with the slide is that always understanding that when governments spend money on the economy, when Parliament proposes changes to the economy, there always has to be thinking where that money comes. But at the same time, it has to be thought in a way different from where you look at business in particular to say, if we spend money on infrastructure, we are like to increase economic activities and we are like to lead to more revenue created within the system. And in our certain context, a large part of our government revenue comes from taxes, which is 80% of it, and largely come from personal income tax, and the more you employ more people, the more this tax will increase, the more you have more fiscal space to spend as a province. And I'm happy to hear that even the province is thinking around how to identify potential tax provisions there. I'm quickly move with the 2023 proposals, which really looks into, I think I have a wrong presentation, which really looks into some of the proposals that were set out in the budget itself, and which really it's around ensuring that, government continue with the strategy of ensuring that there's stability in debt and also supporting socio-economic factors, but also more importantly, dealing with the risks that are set out, particularly trying to deal with the ESCOM or energy security in particular. There are sort of those mechanisms, you've seen them, but I think what was important to understand is that these budget 2023 budget provisions are within the presidential priority perspective in time to reduce some of the mechanisms. But I think what we have saying, I keep giving you what we're saying in a way of showing how members of parliament or legislature can use this act to try and interact with the budget itself, try to interact with the budget, but also try and set the provisions or the goals, objectives for the budget committee, budget office that you want to establish this way. That's why I keep on saying this is our view on this water view. So it's just really in a way of understanding how we do our work as well. We have continuously raised concern about lack of evidence that the government's approach on fiscal consolidation and structural reform can actually support economic growth and create environment for conducive environment. So what we've said to Parliament in this regard, we've been saying constantly, look, we've seen over the past 12 years we've seen actually worsening of economy and worsening of public finances, worsening of development indicators as a result of certain fiscal stance that we've taken. In a way, this is, speaking in contrast to what the Minister of Finance or proposal coming for the budget in that regard. Some of the major provisions of the national priorities come from the continuous spending on social grants, try to support health infrastructure, but also trying to move basic services, particularly local government is one of the major beneficiaries of the current fiscal framework. Coming back to, so I said, you start with fiscal framework, which outlines broadly aspirations by government in terms of the level of fiscal policy goals they want to realize over the next period of time, which locks in the level of expenditure, revenue, and then debt that you want to have over the next 3 years. And once that is approved, then comes the division of revenue. So this division of revenue is largely based on what has already been approved as a revenue from the fiscal framework. It was also within the constitution that requires this process of sharing revenue within the three spheres to be clearly transparent and put out specifically. I'm going to rush through a bit on this one. And it's a requirement that as one of the instruments that Parliament has to put in as well in a transparent way. Hence, once the fiscal framework has been approved by Finance Committee and Houses, then the appropriations committees have to go through this process of approving division of revenue, which has already been locked within the fiscal framework. And hence, once it comes to the province, already it has been locked within that space. But it is required by the Constitution that process has to be very transparent. This is done annually at the national level. A lot of consultation has to take place, and it stays out what will happen over the next MTF in this regard. And of course, this is seen as one of the processes that strengthen oversight of government over the fiscal oversight in that regard. There's a stipulated time frame within the legislation in terms of how this process to take place, how many days. As I said earlier, only once the fiscal framework has been locked, then you can start dealing with the division of revenue within those provisions in that regard. There is specific rules that set out clearly which committee does which part of it. The Money Bills Act at national level is similar to the one in the province, which stipulates that you have to establish this committee. And with this committee, these are the rules that this committee will work with, which is locked in within the Act. But I think, in my sense, that actually many other committees have appreciated having these specific committees that deal with budget. But I think what is very good with, what I found very transformational about the legislation, the provincial one here, is that you're also bringing other functional committees to be part of the budget committees, which makes your budget process more comprehensive because you include both the functional and budget, which it comes to the point whereby budget has to be seen within that context, not just in this isolation of the numbers in that regard. And there are different committees and so on, and also there is a requirement that there are specific stakeholders that will be consulted and participate within this process. I'll quickly move to the 2023 budget division of revenue. We've seen over the years that actually, the share of the pie has over the years changed, shifted quite a bit, which what many has called, I know FFC has called for that over time, where we've seen that more shift has been given to local government rather than to national. And you can see in this graph or table that we have here, we show that over time that actually the more percentage has been given to both to legislation in particular. But when we look at the current provisions, which we are concerned quite a bit, we've seen actually generally there has been decline in the division of revenue per capita. When you look at each and every South African, per capita means just per head in South Africa. We've seen decline in spending within this regard, which could only mean a lot of things. Either the budget growth has not kept up with population growth, but there has been just a reduction in the spending in that regard. And it's a worrying factor because when we have spending at this level that we have currently, we're not able to deal with the level of social challenges, then reducing it actually would make it worse. We also see over the midterm that actually it's only local government and debt service which see growth in the deficit revenue per capita, and again, which requires a lot of innovation by the legislatures, by other spheres, or it requires a lot of thinking around fiscal policy, and we think both are required in this regard. Conditional grants has been protected largely, but I think we've seen that some conditional grants have seen more growth where the funds are transferred directly to the provinces or local government for specific purposes. But again, this has another issue to say, how effective will these conditional grants be? And we'll come now quickly to that to show that. The equitable shares over the next MTF, we've seen a lot of growth generally with all the provinces, with a one particular concern that in the current year we see actually decline with all the provinces' equitable share compared to what you had over the 2023, which factors that we're trying to think what happened there, because you can see that all of them have also declined. We've seen a slight decline in provincial equitable shares over time, but on average you see growth, which again it's a decline because it's below the inflation over time. But I think provinces over this have been protected. Conditional grants, a big one. Most of the conditional grants increases since the revised budget in the midterm. District health programs grants decreased by 2.5 billion there. National Treasury funds, National Treasury services grants decreases. Educational grants also increases. Infrastructure grant increase, very important aspect, come to that later. Human settlement development increases as well. And we've seen, so generally conditional grants have increased because the understanding, the view is that you're able to be more impactful with those. Even at the local government level, you see a lot of money shifted a lot to local government to increase some of the conditional grants on transfers as well. Our approach, our view is always look at the spending per capita, because that, in an economical sense, economists debate a lot on these aspects, but I think looking at spending per capita will tell you really what's happening in the economy. And we're concerned that whether the approach that's been taken in this regard will lead to a reduction in broadly in spending per capita, capital spending per capita, But more specifically, what is important, you see that there has been protection of economic development and community development grants or allocation. But I think our concern is that broad service delivery, especially over time, when you see, when you see this graph after the one that shaded, you see that it's actually showing decline per capita over the next MTF, and clearly that requires a lot of rethinking in how service is delivered, or it requires a lot of thinking on the policy itself over the medium term. Healthcare, we look at healthcare, which is largely a provincial space as well. We see actually a lot of decline over time, to a certain extent that the spending on healthcare per head in South Africa in 2026 financial year will almost be similar to, or if not lower than, the ones that it was in 2017 year. It's a very, very well, in fact, particularly thinking how much, when you look at situational analysis that we did on the healthcare spending in that regard. And that should be an issue that the legislature, budget committee grapple with. Is this what you want the spending within healthcare look like over time? Similar applies to education. It's also been hardly hit, and those are our main fundamental basic services of government. And that's an issue that we raise concern around the understanding of how the medium-term budget look. And that's the work, that's what we do when we provide advice to members. I want to quickly, Chair, if you allow me to quickly go through a few slides where I took some energy, some time to also provide analysis on the province itself, and in a way put it into the legislature's feed that you have so much work cut out for you as a province, particularly to the budget committee, to say what are some of the situations there. Starting there at a high level, we've seen that,
Doc, on that one, please, just
rush to.
not more than 10 minutes.
All right. Okay. All right. Yes. Thank you, Chair. So I think we're seeing that actually our human development indicators is worse off than the average, the national average in the province. Basically, we've got that, and it impacts all the dimensions of the indicator itself. Health, education, income dimensions has worsened or is worse off than the rest of the economy, the rest of the society in the country. We've seen that as a result, some of these are not surprising. We've got highest unemployment rate in the last quarter compared to the rest of the provinces. Unemployment rate has dropped, although it's highest, but it has dropped compared to how it was in the previous times. Dropped quite significantly. It's a good determination, but I think as a committee that deals with employment, you need to take that into account, that we have a lot of work around that. The largest percentage of household services grants compared to salaries and so on. So more households depend on salaries in the province than any other province. It's a quite high number. Again, I repeat, social grants are not a bad thing, particularly if you understand the way budget works. But I think you also want to have more of a remittance moving towards wages and salaries than social grants. Grants were important as a main source of income in the province, and Eastern Cape is the top 3 province that experience a large number of outflow of migrants. It's another big issue. I know last time Honorable Mukhaga was saying, I must come back home. Yes, I must come, I'm home. But yes, there's a clear indication that we have more immigrants from the province going to other provinces. We contribute to other provinces. You need to do something to try to deal with that. Because that obviously at times takes skills go away, but also the labor force that can work. But anyway, there's more social dynamics to it than just what I'm just saying, simplifying it. So one of the provinces that's with the highest proportion of person younger, that's another dynamic. You've got more younger people, and you've got more older people. So the middle age is not here, it's in other provinces. So obviously that will impact your way of economic develops, the way economic growth and impacts. But it means your lot of expenditure will be in education and in health, because more older people in that dynamics. Female households are largely here in the province. This demographic distribution phenomenon has implications for the pressure, as I say, to understanding the budget. This can be useful in regard. The largest percentage, Eastern Cape is the largest percentage of pit toilets with ventilation pipes were observed in the province. It's a big issue again. Hence, I was saying, if you have so much needs in the education, why reduce the spending education? But again, we'll come to the underspending side of it, which also worries me a lot. Provincial 78% of the learners are attending school free. So again, it links quite well with other dynamics. The use of public health is a big issue in the province compared to other. However, even despite that, the spending healthcare has declined, but also you see by the level of how much clinics are actually compatible with the standard that was set out to be. What the standard has set out, what ideally clinic will look like, but only 23% of those are compliant with, and that tells you the worry that we have around spending in that regard. Maybe it's not a spending question, but still, that's the role of this legislation to address that. And so many other concerns that we have in that regard. I'll just skip quickly so that I must not take a lot of time. There's also issue of governance within the government itself, delay in spending, irregular expenditure, and so many other challenges that are in place, which again, this committee, together with the SCOPA, would have to work in dealing with addressing those, but also trying to understand and how those can be addressed. Although irregular expenditure has declined over time, which is welcome, but at the same time, we don't want 1.3 billion is a lot of money for a province to be regarded as irregular expenditure. Last 2 slides on underspending. We did some work on underspending of government budget, but at the same time, we complain about need for expansionary fiscal policy, but at the same time, we've identified that actually some government departments are underspending the same budget that were given to them. And sadly, it's a big provinces. It's not, it's big departments. It's not a small department. Your education, your health, those big ones which you want them to spend, they are underspending, which becomes very contradictory in itself. So our work, we just looked at the few, I think we looked at 3 departments, education, health, and social development, and look at the outcome against the budget and see what some of the reasons are spelled out. You see that largely education, over the past, we did a trend of 10-year trends from 2014 to 2021 financial year, and you see that there's a very general trend of underspending in the education department. Of course, we looked at percentage against the outcome. And I think generally, above 2% has been a key issue. There's one province where you see overspending, particularly the last year, but also is a line of the coming back from the low base from the COVID-19. Social development is a big one as well. We see huge underspending under there. Yet we say in this dynamic, more households depend on the social grant. Yet we're seeing department underspending on that. That is a dynamic that the committee would decide, because this department doesn't spend on this function, what do we do with this money and using the act to allow them to address those. And some of the major reasons, we also in the presentation, there are some of the major reasons why you see underspending these departments, a lack of people who qualify to do the roles that are given, but also not employing people, having vacant posts, having vacant posts, a big issue. Supply chain management problems, non-compliance, but also one other issue which I really like it so much, and I'm glad we have National Treasury here, or Provincial Treasury here, the issues around cost containment measures. That has actually led to many government departments not actually spending, both at national and provincial level, because they have been told over the years, don't spend, cost containment. As a result, even if they've got budget, they don't spend it, because they're told that they rather spend it rather than spending it, because they know that they're told there's cost containment. And I think that language is very important to see how we can move away from that, because certainly operational cost containment is a good measure to try to ensure prudential, financial probity and so on. But we need to be careful not to end up forcing public managers not to spend anymore because of that approach. But again, there's more reasons. You'll read for them for yourself, the members of parliament. But I think my contribution to this discussion is say, use this understanding of what happens within the department as a measure to start trying to determine which areas of you want to focus as a committee of the legislature on improving developmental outcomes within this space. I skipped quite a lot, but I think I'll be here for next 2 days. But I think there's a slide which I'm not going to go through them. I see my time is out, which tries to explain the South African Parliamentary Budget Office and perspectives. But I think I have a few notes I wanted to comment on, again, based on the questions that were raised. And I was given instruction by Dr. Miataza, delegated by him to respond to some of the questions. And I think when I look at the Act, I'm quite happy. It's going to be 2 or 3 points, Chair. The issue of the talking to Parliamentary Budget Office and in line with the budget office within the province. I think I agree with the colleagues that advocate Beja and Dr. Miataza. It's an issue of deciding what context you want this to be. But are some of the common themes, common areas which has grappled us as national, I would not wish the legislature to go through the similar problems in having the capacity that you need. First and foremost, it's important to really capacitate the committee itself, Chair, and then once you have the committee self-capacitated, and then you have this office that the executive must establish to also be capacitated, because otherwise the capacity means human and institutional capacity on both fronts. You need to have those, and I'm glad Dr. Metaza raised the questions around what level of expertise you need to have, which is correct. You need to have those in place. Otherwise, it's not going to be effective in supporting you, and you go back to challenges. Understand there's the issue of budgets and so on, but I think this process has to be seen as part of transforming. I had another member says, transforming from the oversight model. This has to be seen as part of transforming your oversight model in that regard and having very much required capacity. One or two sections that I said to Dr. Metaza that I feel bad I missed about the budget office. I'm not going to talk about independence or not independence because it's very complicated as I listen and I hear. But I think the issue around having budget office is for you to be effective in giving your support. South African national budget, South African money bills, national money bills has deliberately de-linked the budget office from the bureaucratic system to be directly engaging with the system from both functional and from the content perspective, to be directly engaging with the committees that we support and remove us from that bureaucratic. And I see benefits of that, but there's also challenges from that as well. But I think given a chance, I would say you need to have that very effective and direct engagement with the budget committee, which can be protected from any form of influence. Let me put it this way, the Act puts it this way, protected from any form of influence. However, have a clear mechanism for accountability for that, which the Parliament or the legislature can hold that office accountable. That's very important, because the Act expresses the legislature's policy intentions about this, and that has to be spelled out quite clearly. The one aspect which I thought one way or the other, the legislature would try to deal with it as early as possible is Section 15.8. Section 15.8 says budget committee must recommend suitable qualified persons as employees of the provincial budget, blah, blah, blah. So basically it says the committee must appoint staff of the office. That's almost impossible to operationalize. I'll tell you what I mean. Because obviously I'm sharing my experiences here. I've been there for 10 years now. It's like you're saying the politicians must be involved in day-to-day operations of the office. It's almost, and obviously the intention is to protect the office from any other bureaucracies. But at the same time, you are saying members of parliament should be caught up into that operational process, which is almost impossible for them because they've got so much that they do beyond just operation of the office. Appointing the head of the office is a very fundamental issue because we go through a rigorous process. Section 50, the seventh part, the 15.7, says to you, I was appointed through a public process. I went through public process and, the houses had to make sure that when they appoint me, I understand what they want me to do, the houses, when they went through it. But now, they've also made it sure that I understand that and I can translate that to my staff member. Hence, they gave me the power to appoint the staff. However, there must be clear accountability mechanisms that they've put in place for me that I must consult and so on. But to say the committee must appoint the staff, it's almost impossible because appointment, HR process, you shift, you change the dates, you can't interview and so on. I don't think that's what members want to do with the legislature. But I think from a political perspective, I don't think that can happen. But maybe, at least I'm sharing my experiences, that will not probably happen, and maybe something that we want to look at in that regard. But making sure that appointment of the head of the office, it becomes a more transparent process. I think I'm going to stop there, but I'll have questions later, Chair. There are a lot of things I want to comment on, but I think, lastly, when I leave the ANPBO, thank you so much for being there. As a chair of the ANPBO, I would invite you as well to come to the annual conference which takes place in Kenya, which in the state, you'll have other provincial participating in the space. I think Nairobi and others playing there. So it's very good that we are very participating there because also you learn experiences in those. I know I've been saying you must appoint, must come, and all of it requires budget. I know secretary is there. She can hear. Well, that means more money, But thank you so much for this moment, Chair. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jantjies. Welcome, Sak. I would not have seen you if he didn't mention you. Welcome to the session. Thanks, Doc. I think you tried but to rush through the time. Remember, it's not you that was late. It's the system that didn't work. So we are a little bit unfair to you guys. This is what we are gonna do, honorable members and our colleagues. We are going to collapse the discussions for this committee now. We are also going to collapse the tea break. What we will do, we'll take those discussions together with those of the FFC, and then we'll have a working day after those discussions. Or during and after those two discussions. So we will quickly call on Mr. Jonas for the FFC and your team, whoever is gonna present, and for you to take your 15 minutes as Doc has done. Doc has taken 20, but I want you to take 15. He had 3 presentations in one, so I understood. So you can take your 15 minutes now. And then remember also to touch on those issues that might affect you in relation as to those matters that were raised when the discussions on the provincial input was done. Welcome, Provincial Treasury. I left you out when I was acknowledging everybody that was here. Seemingly, the book in Dwendwe. And I don't know what Advocate Beja will say now. When it was the 2 doctors who were saying, look at these 2 doctors, what are they doing there? Now the problem seems to be persistent. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon to you, Chair, and all honorable members that are present here and colleagues from the different departments, including Provincial Treasury and the Budget Office. I greet you all. Okay, I'm Sabelo from the Financial and Fiscal Commission. I'm with Mr. Jonas over there. I hope the questions that will be raised by the House, he will be able to assist, he will chip in and assist. Yes, a lot has been said about the money bill, and then mine will just be to add I don't know what's happening here now. Can you come back, Doc? Because you've...
We ban Bimbis, ne? You know.
Yeah, it's blank now. I don't know what's happening. just.
Ucofe ntoni ngoku Mhlekazi?
Hey,
Slide 4. Itheni apha? Siphinde abana.
that's true, yeah.
What's all sample? Total.
The problem is not showing with him as well. The problem is that it is not showing with him because I would have said, let him continue and we use this, but it is blank there as well. But it has come up now. But cover writing on Mhlekazi.
Okay, okay. All right. Thanks. Okay, I think the presentation will cover just 2 areas of which we'll continue with the presentation tomorrow on other areas, including the money bill. And then what we wanted to share with you, honorable members, is just constitutional mandate of the FFC and the role of the FFC in the division of revenue process. Then with respect to the statutory framework, we are highlighting that Section 220 of the Constitution of our country, as amended, then it provides for the FFC, and constitutional again provides for the commission that must function in terms of the Act of Parliament. And then there's an enabling legislation of the FFC, that is our FFC Act of 1997 as amended. And then if you look at the FFC, who FFC is, it is supposed to be independent. Yes, it is independent, but there are some questions because it receives its funding via the National Treasury. Then there's a perception that maybe it's not independent enough because it gets its appropriation, its funding from National Treasury. And then it's a juristic person subject to the Constitution and the FFC Act as amended of 1997. And then it functions impartially without favor of any province or the national and objective organization. And then there are key reporting lines as the commission, in terms of the commissioners represented by the commissioners of the commission, it reports direct to Parliament and also interact with the provincial legislatures. In terms of its mandate, vision, and mission, is as provided by the Act, those pieces of legislation. It acts as a consultative body that makes recommendations and gives advices to Parliament, to provinces, provincial legislatures, and organized local governments such as SALGA, in the form of SALGA, and other organs of state on issues pertaining to the equitable division of revenue, and again, across all 3 spheres of government. Then the vision is to provide influential advice on the issues pertaining to the equitable sharing of national raised revenue and efficiencies and sustainability of the IGFR intergovernmental financial relations system. It provides proactive, expert and independent advice on promoting sustainable IGFR through evidence-based policy analysis as we conduct research on different areas and different issues pertaining to the IGFR and equitable sharing of nationally raised revenue. The FFC in the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, as you will find it in Chapter 13, is established under Chapter 13, and then Section 220 to 222 of the Constitution. Then according to that piece of legislation, the Commission makes recommendations in a number of areas as envisaged, and in these areas are around the issues that are relating to equitable sharing of national raised revenue, around the government guarantees, whether at national or provincial, but mainly we know that they are at the national level in the main, or provided by at the national level, either to ESCOM or to any other organ of state, then we'll make our inputs there. And then on provincial taxes, when a province needs to introduce a tax on any area, then we do provide with our inputs and the effect, the impact of that. We do assist in municipal fiscal powers and functions. We do assist in provincial loan if a province intends to raise capital, maybe through loans, and then they do come to the FFC for advice, and then we'll have our recommendations, we'll assist, as well as at the municipal level, we do the same. And all these issues, these areas that I've highlighted, can only be enacted only after our recommendations, or we have made, FFC has made recommendations on such issues. And then provincial money bill is the issue that has been discussed at length since this morning, and even tomorrow we will discuss that issue, and we'll make a presentation tomorrow again around that issue. But just to reemphasize that the section 120, subsection 3 of the Constitution provides for all provinces, all provincial legislatures to introduce their provincial money bill amendment procedures and related act. And again, to repeat what has already been mentioned here, that only 2 provinces currently that have exercised this process or have started this process, the Gauteng and the Eastern Cape, and all other provinces are yet to introduce their own bills. And then the money bills, then it covers 3 stages. That is your BRR reports, and also your medium-term budget policy statement, MTPPS, as well as in DORA. Then the role of legislature in the fiscal oversight. Honorable members, they know that they have to exercise their oversight role and monetary role in what is happening within the province as the provincial legislature. And then many legislatures played only limited role in this issue. It's only of late where we've seen that there's an uptake or provinces or provincial legislatures, they do practice their oversight role and in a number of areas, and this will include your approving ex-ante fiscal frameworks and broadening the portion of the budget subject to legislative review, increasing legislative or legislature budget capacity. We've seen that there's an uptake of late on those areas. Then the role of legislature with respect to their oversight, and then how do they do that? How do they practice that oversight role? Is through participating in discussions with all departments in issues when decisions are made on how much is to be spent on different programs. That is their role, and getting involved during the process of resources distribution, and also looking at the expenditure, execution issues, and providing inputs beyond the budget process. And then the challenges that we have highlighted or we're highlighting here is that there is a need to avoid amendments while they're exercising that role that could cause some risk or disruptive in service delivery. So with respect to the process of tabling FFC recommendations, as we have said, the Commission is responsible for advising both the houses of Parliament, the provincial legislature and the national legislature, that is Parliament. It provides such advices in different ways, and mainly those advices are around an equitable division of national raised revenue across the 3 spheres of government, the determination of each province's equitable share, and then in any other, they make recommendations again in any other issues pertaining to the allocations to provinces, local government, and municipalities as part of the national raised revenue. And then how do we do that? We are making those recommendations taking into account matters or issues as listed in the section 214 of our constitution from A to F. And the minister, okay, let me come to the title. The commission tables its recommendations 10 months before the start of, before the budget is being tabled by the Minister of Finance to Parliament. And where and how do we do that? We start at, okay, this cycle, we can start anywhere, but I will start at the entitled, the red entitled part, which shows that FFC annual submission for division of revenue is submitted or tabled to Parliament. As we speak now, we are finalizing our submission that will table to Parliament by the end of this month, which will contain our research work and projects that we did during this cycle that will inform the next division of revenue, that is the budget for next year. And the minister will have to take into account those recommendations when minister tables such a budget. We'll start there by submitting our submission to Parliament around by the end of May, unless there are some extraordinary circumstances that are forcing the commission to submit later. And like during the time of COVID, I think it was submitted maybe later, but within 60 days. And then after that, then we produce technical reports and policy briefs that will be from June to July. And also at the same time, we'll be starting the new research process for which will inform the next division of revenue. So they will run parallel. And then we start FFC responses to Parliament. And then in this instant, from June up to September, or even up to October, we'll be busy with our visits to provincial legislatures like this one and all other provincial legislatures around the country, as well as Parliament and the committees, to present our submissions on the research that we've been taking and the recommendations that we've made. And then again, around September, October, that will be the time of the medium-term budget policy statement. And then again, we're involved there. We do have our own submission and inputs. And then we work through until we get our draft budget that we'll work on and so on. That will inform the budget speech around February next year, and then we work on that process. And then the cycle will start again. That's how we work. I think that is what we wanted to share with you for today. The rest will be shared by tomorrow. And we're adding again this presentation on what has been discussed. We're just highlighting these issues. The rest will be presented tomorrow. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mason Kwabel. Upanza wasigcinela umzuzu xa ugqithe kuwo ngosecacisa iprocess yangomso. Otherwise, he was on time. Honorable members and colleagues, I think we have had the discussions for today, the presentations for today. Now I will note hands for discussion of both presentations. Again, please be fair with time. Treat me the way that you did before lunch. You handled me so well. I will note hands. Honorable Pile is number 1. Honorable Fishlani is number 2. Honorable Malamlela is number 3. Is there any hand again this side? I wanted to mix them. Honorable Panga, number 4. Honorable Zebula, number 5. Honorable Mkhaha, number 6. Nearly Honorable Dr. Doc is number 7. Dr. Miataza, number 7. In that order, honorable members, 1 is Honorable Pillay, 2 Fihlani, 3 Malamlela, 4 Banga, 5 Zebula, 6 Mkhaha, and 7 Doc. In that order.
Thank you once again, Honorable Chair. I think mine is more or less of a comment. I think, Doc, your first report, you are talking about that, that growth rate of 1.5 is maximum. In fact, it's not only giving a bleak picture because we have been worried about the compensation of employees, which you cannot give away because we are not starting from 0 rating, you know. So the same thing with the personal income tax and the corporate income tax. And that's where I want to raise a concern because every year you see that the personal income tax, well, we know that the lower levels, there is adjustments below level. But majority of the people and the middle class, you will see that is going up. But the corporate tax is, well, there is increase, but still it's at 27%. And remember, it is, it is on the profit they are making. The employees travel, there are spending, it's not the take-home money what they get. But why that? And these offices of ours, that is the budget offices and other things, are we really putting that matter into that? Because sometimes we leave this only for labor unions to deal with it. And your presentation is saying that you cannot find, there is lack of evidence that the departments are putting structural reforms. You see, at your highest office, and even our office here, if this is to be implemented, that we cannot find this. How are we going to change? That becomes again a stalemate to all of us, you know. The last question is about, look at the same thing with the Division of Revenue Act. Conditional grants are not being spent. And that's that we know. But yet we don't get the non-financial information. So it means that we are not putting some monitoring tool where we can get that information. And why that silence, like we are actually established for, many, many years. FFC, the last question, Chair, I'm going to sit down. It is saying that there is a resource distribution. And legislature should involve in the resource distribution. But remember, the appropriation is happening, but we are always behind. Already the department start spending. We are looking at CMH, but already they allocated the money, the CMH got accrual and other things, the money has been spent. We are always behind this process. How do you manage that timeline? Because it will be good that we to involve, but where we to involve? Because we are always on the last taxi. The first taxi has gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Pillay. 2, Honorable Fihlani.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the presenters, Chair, on this board doc. Just comments also, I think I've got only 2 comments, Chair, on what I think it's some technical issues that are internal that we have to still deal with when we're dealing with this BRRR matters and your MPTBS. Yeah, when we're dealing with all those issues, there are some technical matters as the legislature now that I think we still have to be involved with. Of some of the matters, you'll find that hence when the speaker is a treasurer also on this, what is warranted on the overall presentation, doc on those matters, which has its own risks and also its own pros on our side. We will be able to amend the budget and what is our pros and what are the cause of those issues. Then, on the issue of the FFC, Chair, I think for me is to note that the timelines that you're dealing with the budget processes. We've passed May, and if you look, ungaveza lanto, kawuveze lanto, so that cycle, if you can, that FFC work cycle. So for me, I think is to note on the timelines there, and the submission or on the issues of DORA, look there, which is also circled in red, and the timelines where you in, and some of the budget consideration and line items. There are two things. So hence I'm saying there are some technical aspects that we still have to be involved through the committee, of course, and interacting with the portfolio committees now in their own budget processes. So I'm saying, I've seen that there are timelines, there's a 15 days and what, but I'm saying that we must note that there are technical matters that we still have to be involved in. And already, because we already, there's an act dealing with that issue, though there are some of his regulations, I do not know, Advocate Beja, the right word, I could say it's sort of regulation or how to deal, because even if you talk of rules that do not speak of your money bills. So I'm saying for now you could see there already there's an act. So if there's an act, I do not know the superiority, is that right, Chairperson?
Yes.
If you say, because for me it's an act that is then with the other issues, they'll be supportive. Or if you talk of regulations, they emanate from the act. So for me, is to say, out of all the presentation, we have to note as portfolio committee chairpersons, as portfolio committee members, and including the legislature itself, in terms of its own, or be it your program managers, there are areas that we still have to be involved in the technical aspects. Ebesingeko involved ke ezipha treasury iskakhulu, but as an institution to deal with those issues. Even if the MEC for finance has dealt with the issues, there are issues ebesingeko that we have to deal with. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Whilst Honorable Malamlela is standing up, honorable members, tea is ready, but I so wish that we should watch somebody coming in before you go out, so that the house is not left empty. So we can go and have tea and come back and have a working tea. But not more than 3 people should be out of the room at the same time. Honorable Malamlela, the whip is gonna help me with that.
Thank you very much, Honorable Program Director. It's very few from my side, Chair, and I want an advice from both Mr. Yankis and Sabel. You see, life in our country is becoming more and more expensive. You've got your high food prices, your petrol going up, your repo rates, everything is just making life difficult for us. Now I want to check, I'm not sure whether it was 2019 or 2018 when it was agreed that some basic foodstuffs be exempted from VAT. And I just want to check from yourselves whether is it still the situation that foodstuff like bread, meal, all those things, are they still zero rated at that rate? And if they are still zero rated, surely that rate now needs to be reviewed. How can we go about doing that under the current situation? Because I see a bulalek. cela nje icebo mna. Two, kule nto ene-equitable share, zamane ndiyithetha chief whip le nto, indiphethe kakubi mna, ndingowalapha e-Eastern Cape. I have a strong view listening from yourselves in your last presentations that you have made to this committee, that the funding formula was a bit unfair to some of the provinces like ours, which are rural in nature and in a way we have a past of apartheid, where we had some bantu stands like your Transkei and Ciskei, yeah, very poor, yeah. Now, the current formula, as per your explanation, was that is based mainly on the census, yeah. And our people will all agree that Kamagoduka, because of course of our past, which made our forefathers to go and work in the mines. And it is still the same. Others go to work in the Western Cape. And as such, when that happens, that census, they are counted there. So I just want to check whether that can be reviewed, the funding formula, so as to accommodate provinces like the rural provinces. Yeah, so I again would say I want your advice, because I don't understand how can it be difficult for, say, I'm in Gauteng like you, Dr. Jantjies. You are in Gauteng most of the time, but originally you are from Eastern Cape. Can't we find a way when we are doing that census of tracing Dr. Jantjies from that indeed as much as he is in Gauteng, but he belongs to Eastern Cape. And as such, when that counting is done, Dr. Jantjies is counted in the Eastern Cape, because that will make things better for us, yeah, rather than our people being counted in Gauteng. So I just want your advices, because I believe really it is unfair to our province. The last one, we talk of, if you check your trends on the underspending, again, Dr. Jantjies, is that some of the causes is non-filling of posts in our province. And I just want to check from you, what could be the causes of that? Does that mean we don't fill posts even though we have money to do so? And as such, we end up returning money to National Treasury. Thank you very much, Acting, Program Director, sorry.
Thank you.
I nearly said Acting Speaker.
You? Thank you, Honorable Member. I'm glad that you corrected the doctor part. I was going to say, please say Dr. Jantjies. You corrected it. Thank you for that. Now we go to Honorable Banga. No, Akhlalo. Whom did you see sitting down?
Sorry, sorry.
That's a joke.
Doctor, thank you very much. I mean, for the analysis. The first one, Doc, is around your situational analysis of the Eastern Cape on the issue of unemployment. It's very clear that half of our population, people in the Eastern Cape, can't put food in front of their children. Meaning our people really, in reality, are living in poverty. That's why we're faced with so many social problems. I think you analyze this thing very nicely. But then when you look at underspending, then you find out that in terms of each and every department, your first top problem is filling of vacancies, cost of employment. That these departments can't. Yes, government is not responsibility to address unemployment. But here is an opportunity for you to create an opportunity and fill a vacancy. You are the poorest province. You can't fill vacancies. Meaning, who is at fault? Do you know, can I tell you who's at fault? It's the executive. But the problem in the Eastern Cape, we do not say it as it is.
Sabawelukuva, Bonange. I don't hear you.
Okay.
Now you are addressing another part
Okay,
of the.
the problem, we don't say it as it is.
Address the house.
Okay, the problem, we don't say it as it is. Because here is an instrument for us to deal with some of the problems that our people are faced with in relation to unemployment. This is a situation generally in municipalities. Wherever there are vacancies, find it, a post, they're not filled. But what are we doing about it? The economy, it's not about doing to do better. I mean, it's very difficult. Look at the, if you can check your bond as we speak right now, things have completely changed. And the middle class is starting to suffer. We're starting to feel it in our cupboards. How much more the poor and the vulnerable? Therefore, here is an option for us to utilize and why it's not used. And I blame it to the executive. I'm going to tell you why I want to blame it to the executive and take it back to the legislature, that we are not necessarily doing what is expected of us to do. You have provided a number of proposals. You say, let's do oversight over programs. Not only oversight, you're not saying let's ask questions. Do you know in committee you just ask questions? They present, ask questions. They respond, those people, they leave. They continue with their life. That there are no consequences in saying, in this program you have not been spending. Fortunately, I was in the local municipality. The budget cycle of a local municipality, by July, there are indicators already that you see, no, but your budget, you are at 33% in expenditure. You are able to go back in council and look and say, but why this ED is not, but it's not happening again. We only make an evaluation of the expenditure when 250 million in the Department of Education is already on the way to Pretoria back to the national revenue. And whose fault is that? It's not a fault of only the executive, it's the legislature. Because our systems do not have indications that also assist us as the legislature to have this indication that that particular department is a red flag. It might put us in the red. Let be an intervention. And I mean, our capacity does not allow that in committees, does not provide us to even our timetable, by the way. Our timetable, therefore, it does not allow us to be able to be flexible and manage expenditure. Therefore, how do we do that? You raise an issue, Honorable Chair. I like the issue the Honorable Member, the doctor is raising, and the Honorable Gentleman. That, amongst other things that must be done in this last slide, is that you must increase the capacity of the legislature. That's what this man is saying. But who budget for the legislature? What is the Constitution? I want you, Doctor, to explain what the Constitution says. In terms of separation of powers, our responsibilities, the Constitution treats them in an equal level. The legislature, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. There's no other one that is above the other. But in the case of budgeting, that Mr. Mvoko from here, Honorable MEC, and the Department of Treasury, and the serious
Sanodlala, I mean, this is the house.
From Treasury, provincial Treasury. They decide how much they give the legislature. But we are saying, increase the capacity of this legislature, since I came back again here, does not have capacity to do its legislative work. You are just saying, you say we want to invite them to Kenya. They don't even have money to go to Kofimbaba, yeah, next door. Therefore, how do we perform our democratic responsibility as the legislature to do oversight over the departments? The first department that is in prison is big in this crime is Treasury, because Treasury wants to be the boss of everybody. But the law says the legislature is supposed to be capacitated to do its work. But who do you blame, Honorable Chairperson? Do you know now? Okay, I'm closing now. Do you know I don't blame Kakul the Treasurer. Do you know what I blame? It's the legislature, which is what the doctor is showing us. It's not using its power to pass and not to pass the budget.
Okay.
Therefore, the fact that as a legislature, we allow to budget for departments before we budget ourselves, we are killing the institution. That's why even the chairs, the roads, the gates, the paints, the toilets, and everything does not necessarily reflect this is the highest house of the Eastern Cape. Lastly, you raise an issue, Doctor, about 3 principles, policy objective. I want you just to explain this to me. The President makes a policy statement, and also the Minister of Finance puts up a policy framework for finances, how money is going to be distributed. Part of the things that the Minister of Finance has said, he said is that we must be able to restructure and look into the bloated public service. But how do we monitor that if there's a national framework that guides on how provinces should behave and how we should be conducting ourselves, that we are following the national framework? Because in South Africa, there's a national policy statement. Nobody follows it. The president of South Africa, that was serious.
Your point is taken.
In Gatata, president, everybody is going this side. What you are saying, we're going this way. That's why our economy, we are unable to manage it in a way that we create a space that we cut certain things in order to protect money and redirect it to other things.
Honorable Zubula, ningayikopi la nto ayenzayo. Ayikho ntle. It's not appreciable. It can't be copied.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I am Dizumkoba.
Tembi.
Chair, mine is just going to be just few questions. Honorable Dr. Malamlel made mention of this issue that my first question in relation to the gap between the rich and the poor provinces. But my question was, how do you then deal with, firstly, when you're doing the budget, how do you then deal with the issue of the gap between the rich and the poor? That one is broad, because it goes to how do you then deal with the challenge that Honorable Member has raised, the issue of Eastern Cape versus Gauteng. Because if you look at the budget, in as much as maybe Gauteng has got a lot of people, but in terms of the need may be more in the Eastern Cape than in Gauteng, in relation to social responsibility, because you said when we are doing the budget, we are looking at the expenditure, we're moving from the point of an expenditure-oriented budget. Therefore, if we are looking based on that one, probably Eastern Cape will be having a greater share than other provinces, based on that. And then how do you then ensure that the reduction in fiscus, because when you're speaking of this, the moving from expenditure perspective versus the fact that there is a reduction in fiscus, and now how do you then ensure that there is an increase in the fiscus? Don't you think now our focus on the expenditure when we're doing budget moves away from us looking more on the investment sides and also getting more resources so that the fiscus could increase? Because, and also, how do you then see the fact that probably maybe even nationalization of mines could also add value to that, to be as also something that could pump a lot of money in the fiscus, so that we are not continuing to be at this stage that we are in. Also, how do you then, because as you're saying that, how do you then ensure, because one most important thing currently that we've got in South Africa, which is the national challenge, is the load shedding. And I'm thinking, at the time of COVID, the budget was geared towards ensuring that it deals with COVID. But now how do you then, because I tried to look at, is the budget now based on that the load shedding is a national disaster? I know it has been moved from that one, but in terms of perspective of the budget, is the budget talking to the national challenge that we've got, which is the load shedding, the way you analyze it, as it was moved at the time of COVID to speak to COVID more, and a lot of reshuffling and changes were done on the budget. Has that been done so that we could say that the budget now is identifying this as a national challenge of load shedding? And also, you're saying the budget is mainly, there's a discussion about social responsibility versus infrastructure development or investing more on infrastructure. But I'm taken back to at the time of 2010 FIFA World Cup, because at that time there was a lot of investment on infrastructure. How would you then see that as having an effect, or is there any returns in that kind of focus where we focus more on the infrastructure? I know you're saying in the long-term benefit, we could have more if we focus more on infrastructure versus maybe social responsibility. But how do you then see, has that yielded returns when at the time of 2010 FIFA World Cup, we're focusing more on infrastructure development? And I think probably maybe, I'm not saying at that time when we were not looking at the social responsibility, but I think the investment at that time was more on that one. On the presentation, also I think on page, sorry, on slide 7, you just looked at the outlook and all the risks that the economy has got. But I think probably maybe you forgot to put in there as also corruption and fraud could also be one of the challenges in the economic outlook. But I'm basing that one because in page 10, you did mention that there is a challenge of corruption. If you look at slide 10, there when you're dealing with the reduction in deficit, in budget deficit, and also supported, and then you made mention the fighting of crime and also corruption, which to my mind spoke to the fact that I was identifying corruption as one of the challenges that probably you'll be having. I'm glad you made mention of the analysis of the recent Cape when you spoke about in slide 32, when you spoke about the challenge that we've got in education and the issue of pit toilets and others. And then you made mention of the returning of funds to national whilst we've got those challenges of infrastructure. And now my question is, are you in national not thinking that the money that had to be returned by the Department of Education should have been reinvested in the Eastern Cape than be taken to those provinces that are richer? And how do you then ensure that we do benefit in as much as there's a failure in that Department of Education? Now, how do you then ensure that we redirect the money to other departments that could also be in need of that one? Because it's not only education that deals with infrastructure, there are other departments that deal with infrastructure. Therefore, why were you not looking at that one? Or how flexible is the law? And because I was informed that at some stage in the Western Cape, that happens whereby the money had to be returned. It does not have to be given to other provinces, but it gets to be reinvested in the Western Cape. Why is that thing not happening in the Western Cape, where the money had to be lost, but we need more of that money than in other areas? Just briefly on this one, Honorable Chair, just maybe one or two things in it.
Repeat one, please.
Okay, just one. Yes. I appreciate the challenge that have been said in slide 9 when you're speaking of the challenges of the amendment bill, saying there's a need to avoid amendments that cause risk. And then the point says that the scope for the amendments for appropriation bill in the House is inherently limited as the process has already been switched to the delivery phase. Because that was my point exactly, to say, at what stage exactly should we put in the amendments at the appropriation bill? Because by the time the appropriation bill is there, it's already at the delivery stage. How long will that process delay the actual delivery of that one? And then I took note of the cycle that you put as the last presentation on page 12. But my interest was, yes, I see this one as a national cycle. But now, it would have been good if you had provided us so that we can have a picture of the provincial cycle, so that we can have at least something that would relate to more than the national cycle. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Mkhaga.
Chair, like ndafuna ukurhoxa. Leka ndafuna ukurhoxa ntona ndiyayiqomba awafumaneki lula la manene. Singasengxakini singafa indlala apha pheleni. No, Chair, a budget is a tool to implement policies. It's an instrument to implement policies informed by material conditions. That's universal. Now, in our situation, poverty is deepening, inequalities are widening, hunger is skyrocketing, unemployment at that level. If then budget is a tool to implement policy, to improve the lives of our people, what then becomes the orientation of our budgetary processes in the country? That recognizes that Eastern Cape is a rural province. There's nothing we can do. Apartheid created a ghost province, Eastern Cape. Abelungu ka created a ghost provinces through disinvestment over centuries. Two, the part of your responsibility, that's my assumption, is also to look after wastages, like your corruption. Currently, there's a new phenomenon of cable theft across that will create potential of creating a ghost towns very soon. Sabane ghost towns, kunyama ngoku kubheka ngapha nangapha. Uyafika with darkness. Now, what then becomes your intervention in such matters as part of containing this wastage? Because now, it's not about improving the lives or development. It's about now reversing the gains that has been achieved, over time. Now, and we repeat again the rehash the question ka honorable we phrase kahle le ndaba model. Fixed chair. That's the last one, Chair. A Westminster model that is used in the country, Westminster model that is used in the world. All colonized countries are using Westminster model, the three spheres of government, this and that and that. But they gave us. They imposed the Westminster model. There's not a single colonized country that has succeeded with development through using the Westminster model. Not a single one. We may go to the whole continent of Africa, we may go to other colonized countries globally that were using the Westminster model as a model for development. Not a single one has succeeded. All of them are grappling even today. Now, don't you think that you need to transcend, it's a figure stage that must transcend beyond the Westminster model and develop an African model that is going to respond to the our problems that are unique? I'm raising Lendo because I've heard that African Parliament, you are leading many committees there as government, South African government. You are leading many subcommittees of the African Parliament. I'll be worried if you are selling Westminster model in those committees Yeah, I'll be worried, but I'm just highlighting that, Chair. Kulen. Benza kulento ye planning commission. Come and hear ke ngizoyixoxa ngomso no FFC xa se engena deeper kwezi presentations zakhe. Thanks, Chair.
Ngosita. Honorable Ndabeni, I remember I deferred you to this session. It's you now, and then Honorable Khabe. And then we end there because Doc says that he's going to ask. Oh, okay. Honorable Makashala after Honorable Khabe. In that order. And then Doc is going to ask his tomorrow. So he is shelving his for tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to all honorable members. And good afternoon to all the presenters and government departments that are here and all the institutions and our officials. Honorable Chair, I had, in fact, my hand was during the first presentation, I think the second, the one of Dr. Miataza. But I'll just coin it with other presentations without asking a question. I think, Honorable Chair, this process has taken too long. We are now 30 years into democracy. We are still grappling with this issue, which is clearly articulated in the Constitution. Sometimes we postpone decision-making because we nurse each other. We don't want to appear as bad. We don't want to fight or to appear as fighting each other, even on a matter that is a very straightforward matter. The issue of us establishing a money bill committee on money bills is a constitutional matter as articulated in the presentation. That should have been done by the Eastern Cape legislature. In fact, it should have been done by all other legislatures. As we sit, Honorable Chair, we are the assimilators of numbers. We only swallow what has already been cooked somewhere. We are given to swallow as a legislature. And we'll be told about this and that. But officials have got powers to amend budget in what they call it budget shifting. They take money from this budget vote to that one. That's amendment. Because when you shift funds, you are basically changing the allocated original allocation. They shift funds. And when they underspend, like as it was the case now with the Department of Education in the Eastern Cape, 100 million is gone. Gone for infrastructure. Now, we'll be made to understand something that is not understandable. That year, 2021, 2022, if I'm not mistaken, it was the Department of Human Settlements. Yes, over 300 million sent back, unspent. So, and sitting here, there are no consequences for that. The Treasurer Department, now I'm the chairperson of finance, they know. And I'm not mixing my words on this issue. Eastern Cape legislature can't be budgeted 600 million. With 21 committees of the legislature, each committee must have less than $1 million budget to oversight departments like education that has got 41 billion. It's like we are given a motor of a motorbike engine and race with Maserati. You see, you are made to fail. You can speak whatever English you want to speak. Officials are making politicians to fail. That's a reality. But Chair, we can't be sitting here and complaining because it's us who must take decisions. This committee must be established, be staffed now. In fact, there's not even a need for us to theorize about it. Nationally, already there's a committee, there's a staff on the money bills that they can, that staff that does the analysis on behalf of the committee. Nationally, there's that staff. We can just copy and paste and see what the expertise we need. Beef up the committee on the money bills, and it must start to work. We are now considering budgets of different portfolio committees, departments. Now, as we speak, if we can amend the budget now, not next year, because this budget that has been allocated Eastern Cape Legislature is going to make us to fail as the legislature. If I want to go and do oversight on a project that is said to be implemented there, whether it's the Department of Education or this health or that, or even ourselves to look into the financial viability of that, we can't, we'll be told there's no budget. There's no budget. A committee should be able to visit. A project should be able to visit and do the oversight on the ground, talk to communities. That's what we're elected for. Now, people on the ground can't expect us, Honorable Chair, to sit and complain. We had 5 years, 2 years minus 2 years of COVID. 2020, 2021, we did not work because there was COVID. This term, we had only 3 years, 2019, 2020. Now, we did not work 2021, only started 2022. This is 2023. 2024 is elections. All parties will be on the ground, hitting the ground running, contesting state power. So, we don't have time. So, my view, Honorable Chair, is that this committee, in terms of what we're proposing to Treasurer there, Treasurer must give us an additional 100 million this financial year as a legislature. And from that, we'll be able to beef up this committee, to staff this committee must work. So that come next year, when we adopt a budget of 2024, 2025, the legislature must have $1 billion to be able to support all the committees of the legislature. We can't have poverty legislature that sits in poverty. For the first time, I'll agree with Honorable Banga. We came here for the first time. I agree with him. We came here, my office, the chairs are old, can't be replaced. You go to every office, the facilities of this legislature, the furniture is old, the connectivity, everything about this institution, because there's no money to maintain this institution. There's no money. Today we started a meeting at 11, we're supposed to start at 10, there's no diesel. The engine is there, but there's no diesel.
On lending, my honorable.
Yes, lending, Chair, I'm lending. I'm saying we can theorize. FFC. Now, I said with FFC, I've engaged them. I don't want to talk about it. It's a legislative body. But my own view about it is that even them, their recommendations are not taken serious by National Treasury. We submit recommendation to FFC. None of those recommendations find expression in the final analysis of the budget nationally when it is presented, or very few of them. One of those, what honorable member spoke about, we have for the last 15 years said, you cannot have a budget in the formula it is now that favors two spheres, provincial and national, at the exclusion of local government. Now, in this formula they are using now, they have excluded historical backlog. In one of the categories, they used to put historic backlog. They've removed that option, that one of those areas of consideration when they're making budget. It means provinces like Eastern Cape, where you have got over 300 years historic budget, that has been removed now in terms of the formulas determining the budget allocation. It means now we're treated with the same as Western Cape and Gauteng, provinces that are far developed than Eastern Cape. in the eyes of the National Treasury.
Okay.
So, Honorable Chair, Leno Sianzayo is like you have got power, but you're not using it. This committee of Honorable Duba must work. From the point of view of finance, we will collaborate with them in terms of what has been defined in the Act. We've got an Act signed by the Premier now. We're just being workshopped to understand it. We're not generating an Act. The Act is there, it's signed, there's law. There's law. We're just being educated and workshopped about it. We must implement it.
Thank you.
That law favors us. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Khabe, and then the Honorable Chief Whip.
Thanks, Chair, and greetings to all in the House, Chair. I hope, Chair, this question that I'm going to raise is going to be relevant to what is being presented here. Chair, it is based on the challenges that have been raised, Chair, as outlined by Honorable Malamlela, of this rural province that has got a burden, historical burden of socio-economic conditions, Chair, that we all know, because we are a province that is faced with the triple challenges, Chair, and one of the poorest provinces, Chair. Chair, I'll base my question on my clarity-seeking question with, based on Department of Health, Chair. We are talking of the NHI bill that is going to be a conveyor belt for the universal health care coverage, Chair. Yet we have a department, Chair, that is starting its financial year with a burden of more than 4 billion, Chair. So each and every financial year, the department gets its budget. There is that deficit of more than 4 billion that it has to cater for. A department that has a burden of infrastructure backlog, Chair, that has got a shortage of staff, that has got litigations. And one of the main reasons for the department to be litigated is because of the shortage of staff, it's because of the equipment that is not there, or proper infrastructure, Chair. And as we are talking about this NHI bill that we are fast-tracking to pass, Chair, I wonder how are we going to be as Eastern Cape? How are we going to provide these services, Chair, if we are facing these challenges? Chair, yes, some work has been done with regards to these litigations, and we are proud of that. However, Chair, we are far from addressing that issue, Chair, because even now, the judgment that was passed is being challenged. So we do not know whether we are going to win it or not. The question then, Chair, is based on, in 2012, National Treasury intervened in 3 provinces. That was Gauteng, Free State, and Limpopo. Limpopo and Free State were put on Section 100. Gauteng province, the intervention there was based on Section 6, Chair, of the Public Financial Management Act to stabilize that Department of Health there. Can't that be done in Eastern Cape? Can't the National Treasury, as fully Section 100? However, what was done in Gauteng, Chair, can't it be done here? So that at least when the bill has been passed and when we are starting the rollout of this NHI, we are at least stabilized as a Department of Health, Chair. Can the National Treasury help the department, Chair? Thank you very much.
Honorable Chief Whip, thank you. It's you now.
Thank you, Chair. I want to check that the team card Duba Oh, Honorable Chair of Chairs. Galvin, kesakwenyimeko esithetha nje kuzo. We are from a weekend. My apologies, and
Apology accepted.
in this
I
house,
think it does too.
you are Honorable Konza,
Yes.
not how I normally do. Honorable Chair, my issue is just on the, listening just to members now, not the presentation. It would seem as if we will have to have a meeting with the committee we've just appointed, so that some of the things and the approach on how they would then handle them, they get to be empowered, of course, so that all these matters that we complain about, they find expression in terms of their plannings and whatever would be their process forward, because there's a lot that needs to be attended to. And of course, the provincial treasurer, we shall have to corner them somewhere, so that as and when we present our frustrations, which to me, we kind of having these matters unresolved, this somewhat sort of reminded me of the chairperson's workshop or something that we had at ICC. You see, now once you have such a recurrence without them being attended to, it's not healthy for the institution. That's just what I wanted to reflect on. But importantly, Chair, is the issue of the consultative process by the committee, of course, working with FFC and provincial treasurer on budget, on tenants like your DORA and so on, so that you get to municipalities as a collective, of course, governed now or under the stewardship of the money bills committee we've just established, so that they get to be exposed to that level in all these matters that we are being exposed to now here. That was just my take, Chair, and I think the sooner we move with speed, the better, so that we do not have all these matters piling up without us resolving a single one. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip, Honorable Makosha, and honorable members for your questions, and some were comments. I think I need to direct how we deal with them. Tomorrow again, FFC and also Dr. Janjis are coming back with presentations. Hence, they were saying that we'll deal with this thing tomorrow, we'll deal with this one tomorrow. So I'm giving them this option and leeway and allowance that certain questions that are related to the issues that we are going to present tomorrow, sort of package them so that you get to town with them tomorrow as you make the presentations tomorrow, Tatu Jonah, so that there is no way that we sort of hush them, especially when we still have time to present tomorrow. With the hope that tomorrow we won't have the complications that we had today. So we'll start on time, and I was going to suggest something, Chair, when I speak with you, I have to consult on that, because I'm worried about this 10:30 tomorrow with these issues that I want to propose. So that is what I was gonna say. So I would say that when you come to present, please to respond on those issues that you feel that they are by no way going to be touched in the presentations that you will make tomorrow. But also don't bet in tomorrow's presentations too much by saying all is going to be responded to tomorrow. We still have about, for your responses, we have about 15 minutes. And in fact, let me say 12, inclusive of the closing remarks by the chairperson. So come and respond, and then those that you feel that you will package tomorrow, indicate that those that you have left, even if you don't mention them one by one, will be dealt with tomorrow. I think that is fine with you. I think that's progressive.
Thank you so much, the chairperson and the honourable members for the questions. I think there were a lot of comments, so at least there will not be a lot of questions to answer to. But I think what I would start by saying, Chair and members, is that really the comments from the members and honourable members shows that the budget committee has its work cut out. Because really the analysis on underspending was really a provocative analysis, really, to provoke legislature in particular, because I did a situation analysis and I did underspending, which really, in my view, is a really problem of really how do you match the two, as honourable member was saying. So I think that really shows that the money bills, it's timely in the province to really. And these are the issues, in my view, that the budget committee would deal with, because if you are able to say, there hasn't been spending in that particular program, maybe that money could be used to create more jobs elsewhere, and so on, rather than returning it to the fiscals, as members are saying. And I'm very happy that that provocative statement has really hit the target that I wanted. And I think it was just to show that, in my view, that there is quite a good intention, and the objective of this act would work within such scenarios. And here, unintended consequences, lack of consequences, clearly. But it is problematic to say to National Treasury, Provincial Treasury, give us more money if you're not spending it. They'd rather use it for something else. But if the budget committee has powers to take that money which we have for other programs, then we can ask for more money. But I think the issue around spending on what and so on, our concern has always been the case that there has been a lot of clear evidence of need for, infrastructure, upgrading from social and also economic infrastructure in our country. We look at local government, the water plants in bed space, look at roads and so many others. There's no argument why have we not spent infrastructure. And I think the committees like this can really start thinking, using the money bills to really look at the long-term perspective. These are the priority areas. And I think spending can be a simple way to really start kick these tires, because it's largely about kicking tires at the beginning and really getting these things to work. So there's a very good point. The issue of spending, and that being seen as a way of transforming a society and economy, is a very important dimension, and it's our approach to budget analysis of government, precisely to understand that if you're not going to spend money to fix ESCOM 20 years ago, we'll have load shedding. The issue of ESCOM is a lot now. It's because of government not spending, investing enough in ESCOM. And I remember former President Ndeki has apologized for that. But we have not built up on that and really invest in that space. And it's such things that within the legislation, in my view, we can influence that. And that's really the intention of my view, how this act can be used to say, how do you make infrastructure spending at the same time protecting the poor households, protecting the demand in the economy by spending more money within social infrastructure or social policy. What I was saying there, I wasn't saying you must do one and leave the other. You must do both. You must spend money on social grants, because that is a basic fundamental right of ensuring there's no hunger, there's no poverty. And at the same time, you must spend money on infrastructure. And both expenditure actually improve economic development, improve budget itself, raise revenue, and so on. So that's the point I was making. And I think the analysis, in my view, of the budget and all of that, it should be within that context. Government, obviously, when National Treasury present their budget, it's often, I think National Treasury is in a very difficult space, I must say. Because at the same time, they play a role of a referee, and sometimes they play a role of the player at the same time. And in my view, this money bills helps that delineating those responsibilities quite clearly, whereby they become a player, you become a referee, as a legislature and how you deal with it. And I think also the national level, National Treasury has been given a very difficult task. And I think the legislature has to really help National Treasury in playing a more role of oversight in that regard, or setting the policy objectives and ensuring that the budget follows through on those. That's really the purpose of the presentation. Specific things on taxes, I'll just skip, but I think what we were saying there, we have raised concerns around how much, which tax should go where in that regard. And when you have this office chair, you can tell it to say, advise us on what policy proposals can, tax proposals or revenue, whatever it can, and we've provided that, and that can be the work that the capacity takes place. I think to just go sit down and see, it's 4:30 now. I think my message, Chair, is that I agree with members, implement the Act. You can implement the Act, identify, I think it's clear, there's a lot of appetite, there's a lot of clear understanding of this needs to be implemented. I think we just need to understand that, you know, what consequences we want to have in place, or but what's the next step? Because at the same time, one question that came to National was that, you know, proposals for amendment came in, but there must be a process to understand how to get to that stage. And if you amend main proposals for amendment, so what? What happens? How are you going to follow that through? It's more of nuanced issues. But in my view, Chair, the Act is ready to be implemented. And I think I'll just skip there. I just try to touch a few themes. I'll leave it there. And thank you so much for the opportunity. And I'll come in tomorrow again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. With the FFC Chair of Chairs, most of them were comments, especially comments in relation to their authority power teeth vis-a-vis National Treasury. So what I'm going to say is that they can, when they present tomorrow, emphasize on certain issues. There are also other issues that are referring or implying that our provincial treasury has to respond on certain issues. Tomorrow they are also making a presentation. So in your presentation, I hope you touch base on the issues that were raised. Before you come, Chair of Chairs, honorable members, I gave everybody much time, even on the matter of questions and responses. The fact being that the members of the committee have been workshopped, I think more than once on the bill, and on the Act, in fact, and now even inducted into the committee. But there are also other members that were now to be workshopped today. So I couldn't then sort of limit them from participation, because that is what we wanted them to do, so that they are also capacitated in the process. So that is why I was so generous in relation as to dealing with this. The second thing, Chair, that I wanted to propose, you can overrule it, is that tomorrow let us not start at 10:30, but let us rather start at 10. Because I'm looking also, the Chief Whip has extended and sort of told MECs to be here. So it means that the interaction is going to be broader. And therefore, if the executive is also going to be here, it means that more time will be needed. So tomorrow, I am proposing that let us start at 10. I won't even make some of the rap. It is going to be done by you. If you want to say something now, as a way of closing up. He's nicking his head. Ne? So, no, okay. So tomorrow he's going to make the reflections when we close. But a lot has been covered today. But what I would plead members to do is that I so hope that two things, Honorable Chief Whip, on the directive that you have given, I think, and the issue of the time, I think, Secretary, there needs in the legislature WhatsApp group to be a notice then that, or a reminder that goes with the corrected time, because people will know the 10:30. So the 10 o'clock time will have to be communicated. That is the first thing. And then the second thing is around also the issue of the presence of the executive tomorrow. It needs again to be in the way that everybody is reminded, to come as a reminder for the executive, as the Chief Whip has done. Thank you very much for handling me so well. The session stands adjourned until we meet at 10 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you so much. Are you okay, Chifu? I don't know what I'm going to tell you. Are you fine? Oh! Okay, thank you. It can't be like that. No. Tea is still available there. That will be wasteful expenditure. Please go and grab tea and make it a point that the kettles are empty there.